I'm president of this organization. Want to welcome everybody here today. If you're like me, you know, first time I've been here, I've heard a lot about this place, and it's even more impressive than I expected now that I'm actually in here anyway. And so just can't imagine it turned out so well. Anyway, we were at Beck's, those of you who were at the annual meeting last year. And so obviously still a Beck connection here with this barn. And it's called the Lawrence. Most of you know that was Sonny's dad's name, or you know what he went by at least. And so anyway, a connection there with them certainly. And we've had a chance, especially with a couple of board members, notably Christy Perry, who is here somewhere, the Purdue Research Foundation, as well as the Cunningham Group. If you have not been yet back to the restrooms, there are some pictures of barns back there, a little bit about Indiana barns, and the Barn Foundation was able to be connected with that and help with that, and Christy kind of led that effort on doing that. So we decided early on after this place opened that it was going to be a little different than our typical annual meeting, but that we just had to have it here. So that was a pretty easy decision. A little more expensive than most places we have our annual meeting, but we thought it would be well worth it. Anyway, so again, welcome, appreciate everybody being here. I've told Christine, but any other board members, I'll have board members stand here at some point once we think everybody's here a little later. But anybody, any of you, I will forget things, so just remind me, just speak up and let me know what I've forgotten. So we're gonna start out with first thing. We lost a very important board member this year, Tim Sheets. If any of you knew Tim, excuse me, our Heritage Farm was quite a place. I had a chance to be there one time. There's a lot going on. I know Beth and the family are still operating it, and I'd recommend you try to visit there sometime. There's a lot to see. So Tim did so much in the organization over a long period of time. He was our treasurer for several years, put together our website. One of the things that always impressed me about Tim was almost as old as me, and for those of you who know me, I wouldn't say I hate technology. There are aspects that I like, but I hate updates on my phone. I will tell you that. I mean, don't give me another update. I just like it the way it is. Tim embraced technology, which just always amazed me and really put together a lot of the things. I'm not even going to go into all of them because those, except for the people on the board, you won't even know what some of them were. But anyway, Tim was very important to the board. And we miss him. He was a great guy, aside from all that he did for the Barn Foundation, but certainly did want to take a minute here and recognize Tim and make sure that everybody knew about his passing anyway. Okay, now we're back to that slide of mine, and I am going to introduce now Bernie Engel, who is the Dean of Agriculture now at Purdue for how many months, Bernie? 3 years. It's been 3 years? Ah.
This week it was 3 years.
Oh gosh, gee. Well, all right, there you go. That's, again, showing my age. You know, things just go by. I've had a chance to know Bernie for a long time. He's been here at Purdue. I think your BS was actually from Illinois, right? He's had some Illinois connection there, but certainly has been here. And I should say, the Glenn W. Sample Dean of Agriculture. I do know enough to get that in. So anyway, without further ado, we'll let Bernie tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Kent, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. So yeah, thank you. We had a long commute to get here this morning. We live a couple blocks this direction, so thanks for making this in the backyard of Purdue and in our backyard as well. This is a fabulous place, and I think if you've not been here before, you'll certainly enjoy the day, and I'm certain they would be thrilled to have you come back. So just a few quick highlights about College of Ag. We continue to do very, very well reputationally, both internationally and nationally. Ranked number 6 internationally, number 3 here in the U.S. And I think the story that my wife, who joined your organization now that she found out you existed, so you recruited one by getting me here today, and so she always says, you got to tell the story that the 2 ahead of us are on either coast mostly, so California and in New York, and who's the best in the rest of the country in the Midwest? It's us. And that's who we should be, right? Midwest agriculture and all the things that we're celebrating today and always around barns and everything else here in the state and beyond. So we continue to do quite well there, thanks to all the missions performing at a high level. Another strong year of research. Research continues to be the driver for opportunities for students, for faculty, for many staff supported on these as well. And the story I always like to make sure I share, why is it so important beyond those things? Return on investment in ag research at public universities like ours is 20 to 1, and we're probably better than that, right? So round numbers, we spend better than $100 million a year, a lot of that federal funding, industry funding, other, and investments then by the federal government, state government in us. So $100 million, 20 to 1 ROI, $2 billion of impact. So we're doing that annually. You're not going to see all that impact from the things we do this year obviously. Those are going to play out over 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. But when you're doing that every year, pretty good impact for the investment there that really leverages a whole lot of other opportunities as well. Extension continues to do well, continues to be that connection from campus to every location in the state. We're certainly in the midst of some transformation. I'll touch briefly on that here in a moment.
Bernie, hang
Yes.
on. Now that I sat there,
It,
I forgot to advance the slide.
okay, well. So I have to start over?
I thought it was me talking all the time.
Okay. So Extension continues to do quite well. We're in the midst of a transformation. So, the state now will have, I guess officially come January 1, 12 areas. Rather than having everyone embedded in single counties, they now work across a region. 4-H continues to be local. It needs to continue to be local and will be. Secret sauce of 4-H, and I think many of you know that, more than 10,000 volunteers. And I talked to a few of you earlier this morning, working at fairs right now, among other things. So thank you for those that volunteer. Continue to encourage others to volunteer there as well, because that's the real big driver for the 4-H part of things. As we move to these regions, I think what we're going to ultimately find is that our staff that are sprinkled throughout the state, all 250 or so of them, are now going to be spending 75% of their day in their area focused on the things they're most passionate about, rather than 25% in a county that they had been in and 75% of other things that were necessary to make Extension work. So I think as we get through the transformation, we're going to find a really healthy ecosystem out there. So thank you ahead of time for your support as we work through this transformation. So we will get there, budget driven. So when you don't have raises on the dollars that support Extension for 20 years and you get raises annually, pretty tough situation from a financial standpoint to make that sustained. But I do think we will end up with a better opportunity for many of the people out there and those that they support. Certainly getting ready for the new academic year. As you came through campus, you probably saw that summer is not only summer, but it's construction season. Always construction season as soon as the first or the last commencement's over until just about a few days before things open up, and then magically the fences tend to go away, the roads all open up, And so things are about to change here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. We'll have a great incoming group of undergraduate students this year. I think we have on the order of 630, 640 coming in. We were mid-500s last year, so a pretty good bump there. We'll probably be about 2,900 undergraduate students. We have capacity for more. We would love more. And part of the we would love more story, not annually, every 5 years, we do a study with USDA on job outlook in agriculture. And we did the last one that wrapped up last fall. And it said, over the next 5 years, there are going to be better than 2 jobs for every graduate of programs like ours and other programs nationally. Better than 2 jobs. And so the challenge is our pipeline. And that's true elsewhere in the country as well. So if you know young people who want a phenomenal career, encourage them to take a look at agriculture. We would love them to be at Purdue, but certainly elsewhere would make a big difference in helping meet some of these needs as well. I think many of you are aware that I think this is year number 3 that Purdue will operate a campus in Indianapolis. It's treated as the same campus as here. And we will ultimately get there in some other ways, but we're thrilled. We hired 2 great new faculty in agricultural economics, working in agribusiness, working in policy and related. They will start there this fall. Center of gravity for much of ag business and certainly policy here in the state is there. So that will be a phenomenal opportunity to have them close and embedded in that ecosystem. So that will be great news as we move forward. We're in the midst of a Victories and Heroes campaign. So it's been fun talking about some of the victories that the college has had and some of the many, many heroes. And I would dare say probably some of you have some Purdue faculty, staff heroes that come to mind as well. And one of the pleasures in my job, I get to hear about many of those at almost every place I go. And that's always a lot of fun. So we're in the midst of that. Well, I think we're looking forward to a great year. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, and we'll look forward to the program. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie. Appreciate you being with us today and sharing a little bit about what's going on here. Okay, now I think about everybody's here. I want to ask, and if you would look on, is that page 12, I think? You have the board members listed. I'd ask all the board members who are here, most are here, to stand so that people, and most of them will have on name tags, not like mine. We have official name tags, but I couldn't find mine, so I had to go with what I had. But anyway, get a chance today to talk to them. If you have any questions about what's going on in the organization, they can tell you, but hopefully you're going to get a good rundown on that today. Now, the other person I want to introduce, who is going to introduce our next speaker, is I'm still going to say new, executive director. She was with us last year for the annual meeting and a couple months before that. But Christine Page is the Indiana Barn Foundation executive director and is doing a terrific job. And hopefully, we're going to be able to make even more advancement here in the next few months. So, Christine, I'll turn it over to you, and you can introduce our next speaker.
All right. Can everybody hear me? I'm not as loud as Kent, so.
Nobody.
Well, our first guest speaker is Lee Gowdy of the farm at Prophetstown. Just a little bit of his background. He didn't start off in the position that he is in now. He actually is from Logansport, moved to Lafayette in the late 90s, and he worked at Eli Lilly in the quality control lab. And then he joined his wife's home care by design. And they worked together until they sold the company in 2021. And then he had a complete career shift and now gets to spend his days at the gem of a location in a state park that is a working farm, kind of a museum. And he gets to spend his days doing that. So he's going to tell you all about it. Here's Lee Gowdy.
Well, thank you so much for having myself and representing the farm of Prophetstown today. Christine about laid out my whole speech today, so that was very good. Let's see, I need to toggle this through. There we go. So yes, the farm at Prophetstown is a not-for-profit organization operating 100 acres within the boundaries of Prophetstown State Park. Is that going to toggle through? Near historic Battleground, the farm is dedicated to offering a range of unique experiences on all aspects of the 1920s farm life, from gardening, canning, sustainable agriculture, to cooking, sewing, quilting, and other household skills. Our purpose and mission
Technology.
There it is. The farm offers a tranquil, humble experience where visitors can enjoy the serenity of simpler times, preserving memories while making new ones. Not long ago, family farms covered the landscape in America. 1920s farmsteads were once the livelihood of nearly half the population in the Midwest. With machine modernization, commercial farming over time took the place of horse-plowed fields, heirloom gardens, livestock fed by hand, free-ranging chickens, and small family-run farms. New technologies saw younger people searching for jobs outside of the family farm. Over time, as family farms were sold to commercial farmings, the 1920s era of farming began to slowly disappear. Luckily, the farm at Prophetstown has been here to preserve this way of life. So yes, my name is Lee Gowdy. I'm the executive director at the farm at Prophetstown, and I do have kind of a strange career path to get to the farm at Prophetstown. I worked many years at Eli Lilly in Quality Control Laboratory, where we tested chemicals and potencies of analytical chemicals within pharmaceuticals. And I did that for several years, worked my way through training and then ultimately supervision. And of course, then my wife's career path was in senior living, which she ended up owning her own home care agency. And we thought that together it'd be a good match to grow her agency. And I left Eli Lilly and worked 10 years with my wife at our agency. Now, I always said that she owned the business and she was the boss, but at home I was the boss, that's for sure. So after we sold the business, we took a little break, and after about 3 months, she said, well, what are you going to do now? And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I've had this strange career path so far. Do I want to go back to a corporate setting or continue giving back to the community? So I found the opening at the farm at Prophetstown for the executive director's position, and I thought I'd go talk with them. I said, I don't know anything about history or agriculture, but I do know business growth, community connections, HR, and all those fun things. So we said, let's give it a try. So I jumped in and said, let's give it a try. And so here's my first day at the farm at Prophetstown. So when I took the position as the executive director at the farm, I didn't know what I had stepped into. I had a lot to learn. The past 4 years have been spent with a focus of getting back to the farm's roots, the original plans, rebuilding the culture, and establishing processes that make and maintain sustainability. We are now shifting our attention from the physical repairs to events and education that we provide for the community. So the farm offers an event every weekend for the community to come out and participate. Most of those are free events. We do 5K runs out in our prairie. We do Easter egg hunt for the kids. We have Ileana and Tractor and Power come out and do a tractor show. Purdue does a homesteading event at the farm. Christmas on the farm. Actually tonight, if you're still in town, come out to the farm and we'll have a concert in the barn at 5:30. Vintage baseball games, that's fun. We do Family Day. country fair, trick or treat with the animals, planting with kids, iced tea on the front porch, Father and Mother Day, cookouts, blacksmithing, and of course our famous farm-to-table dinners, just to name a few. The farm also has many school tours in the spring and the summer and other tours throughout the year. It's easy to estimate that the farm sees 35 to 50,000 visitors a year from not only our area, but from around the country and around the world. Being in a state park, we have campers visit from around the country, and being next door to Purdue, we have a lot of international students that come in, and when they're here visiting, they want to visit Indiana and the things in the area, so they'll visit the farm. So literally, we have the opportunity to share our historic farmstead around the globe. Physical improvements on the farm include repairs and painting of most of the buildings, entrance sidewalk, new storage garage, and a long list of others. This also includes new events that are mindful to 1920s history and promote tourism for a wide range of visitors. Families can observe and participate in these pastimes through educational programs and immersive events offered to preserve and celebrate the memory of historic farming. Young and old can hold on to and enjoy the serenity of simpler times at the farm whenever they visit. Probably our largest project that I've done over the last 4 years is the exterior restoration of our Gambrel barn. The barn is 40 feet wide, 80 feet long, and stands 34 feet. In fact, walking through today, I've picked up some ideas that I might do in our barn. Our barn was built on site in the 2000s, and most of the wood came from 2 fallen barns in southern Indiana. When I first started, I had a lot of maintenance and repairs to do. But walking around our barn, I just knew that I needed to get, and again, back to not having an agriculture or history background. I didn't know that much about barns, so I needed to go find the experts. So I needed to find someone who would give us a professional assessment of our barn. Not having that deep agricultural background, I rely heavily on the experts in our area. So I began reaching out to folks who might have someone who could give us that professional report. And that was a bit of a challenge. There's not that many people out there there's construction folks, but they don't always understand the restoration of a 1900 century barn. So it was about a 5-step process of calling from one person to the next, and ultimately I was able to meet Mark Hufford. And some of you may know Mark. Mark, his sons, and his team, Peg and Penn, have been a valuable asset to me and the recent growth of the farm. I have learned many interesting facts about historic barns from Mark, which I'd like to share. In the 19th century, barns served as an essential multi-purpose hub of agricultural life, acting as a combination factories, warehouses, and stables. Their primary purpose were housing draft animals and livestock, storing loose hay and grain, and protecting valuable farm equipment. The farmer's barn was often built before the house. During the 19th century, farmers often built the barn before the main house. The barn was the economic engine of the homestead, prioritizing the storage of crops, protecting expensive livestock, and sheltering the heavy equipment over the farmer's living quarters. Old 19th century barns in Indiana are disappearing at an alarming pace, with an estimated 90% loss over the last century due to severe weather, development, and high maintenance costs. To combat this recent decline, groups like the Indiana Barn Foundation are providing restoration grants, free barn assessments, and resources to help owners save their properties. So everything that you do helps preserve that historic agriculture and the barns in our Midwest area. 19th century barns relied heavily on heavy timber frames using hand-hewn local hardwoods joined by wooden pegs and complex mortise and tenon joints. This was a very labor-intensive work. Builders laid stacked fieldstone foundations and raised massive frames collectively in the community. In the 19th century, barn construction saw marks are the most reliable physical indicator of a building's age. The transition from hand-hewn timber to water-powered saws, steam-driven circular saws provide a clear and progressive timeline. I'm sure Mark is proud of me right now. I knew none of this. Luckily, our barn's frame timbers were sound, but a complete exterior restoration was needed to preserve our barn. And of course, you just don't run to Lowe's and get dimensional lumber when you're a 1920s living museum. So construction began on our barn. It was about a 6-week process, removing the old siding, and then ultimately our wood came from a sawmill in southern Indiana off of Family Farm, yellow poplar, and it was cut on site and then delivered to the farm. The planks and the battens, the new boards, and all of this work that was done is very similar to the way they would have done it in the 1920s. Now, yes, they did use safety gear, much safer than in the 1920s, but it was all hand-intensive labor. It was all pulling it off by hand, making sure that the structure, beams, and supports were all good, and then all hands work, taking it off, putting it back on, and it was all hand-painted. So a lot of intensive labor to restore the exterior of our barn. So our barn stands proud and iconic now, showcasing Indiana's agriculture history as it once was. The farm at Prophetstown is a living museum, 1920s living museum, and we take pride in what we do. Our mission is to share this pivotal time period in American agricultural history with our many visitors. We also hope they learn how to use these principles and practices of the era to better their lives today. Oh yes, and tonight is our concert in the barn, so it does start. It will be food and fun and games and things for the kids. The farm is a special place, and there are so many people that make it happen. We do have a paid staff that mostly takes care of the grounds and the animals. We are a not-for-profit. We're within the boundaries of the state park, but we're a not-for-profit. And we do have a board that participates in the direction and the vision of the future. And then there's also the community through volunteers, donations, time, social media followers, friends, and people with ideas and advice. I would like to personally invite all of you to come see and visit the farm and meet with myself and also some of our team. Today I also have Spencer Roller sitting in the back, who is our new development director, who is reaching out to people and sharing our vision into the future. The farm has preserved a way of life that is slowly slipping away. I am looking forward to being a part of making the farm a place where the young can learn and the old can remember for years to come. And I would love to hear your ideas on making that a reality for us and making the farm the very best it can be for generations to come. I think I have a few minutes. So are there any questions about the farm at Prophetstown, past, present, future, and what we do on the farm?
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The first relates to the farm. Do you have period tractor equipment and so forth that you use, or is it modern?
So the question is, do we have modern equipment or historic pieces, implements on the farm? When I arrived 4 years ago, many of those had been in disarray and disrepair. We've repaired what was on site through the help of so many donors and so many families bringing in wagons and tractors and things. Everything on site you're going to drive in would be 1920s. And we slowly but surely restore those implements, plows, horse-drawn cultivators, and It is fascinating to sit on some of that equipment and really go back in time and think, somebody hooked this up with a mule and was out 8-10 hours a day riding this thing. And then when you drive by the fields today and the computerized GPS-driven tractors, it's just amazing what 100 years, how much change has happened in agriculture. But yes, when you visit the farm, I want you to feel like you're going back in time. You're going to see, we have 2 museum homes that have period correct antiques, and it has the actual smell of a 1920s farm. So anyone that's visited probably knows what I'm talking about. What was your other question?
Yeah, the second question was, I'm curious to know where the sawmill is that you got your popular board from.
Oh, well, you know, the question is, you're absolutely right in that, because just as 19th century barns are going away, so are those who would have a working sawmill or find the correct materials and dimensions in the woods that would have been used at the time. That one picture with the saw marks, that comes from a sawmill. It's not a straight blade where it would cut straight cuts. It was the circular cuts that you can make a period determination on when that building was done. So it's difficult to find. I'm going to reach out. I think Mark is here today. I'm going to reach out to him, and he'll probably have an answer where that farm is at.
Helmsburg Sawmill is where we had the sawing done on this barn. If you look them up, you'll find them down there. So those of you closer to here, there's a sawmill at Camden. They're horse and buggy people, and it's a wood miser, so it's a straight cut. It's not the circular blade, because stick with the circular blade. Helmsburg is the only place that we found.
Brown County.
Down Brown.
Brown County. Nice. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Great questions, yes. What other questions about the farm at Provincetown? I think that everyone is all throughout Indiana that's here today, right? How many have been at the farm at Provincetown? Oh, nice, a good show of hands. So the farm, does provide that unique experience. It's great for kids, but it's great for people that used to go visit grandma's house and remembers that, and it relive those experiences, and also folks who that lived that period. There was a time where I reached out and I was looking for anyone that lived in the 1920s that was grown up on a farm, and I want to sit down and talk with them. Believe it or not, I talked with 3 people who were born in the 1920s, and I sat down with them because not only do I physically want the farm to look like that, I want to know what it felt like, what their day was like. I can imagine today when it's 95 degrees and you're working the animals and you're feeding the pigs and you got the animals and working in the garden and everything, no air conditioning, what that day must have been like. It's a lot different than today. Families were tighter and together. Communities came together and helped each other out. Those things that you don't see, I try to also bring into the farm and make sure they're there for people when they visit. So it's a neat experience. Kent?
Could you tell us a little bit about the history of the property and the name Prophetstown?
Nice. So you're right. So the question is, where did that name Prophetstown come from? And what's a little bit of our history of how we came about and entered within a state park? Which came first, the chicken or the egg kind of question. So Prophetstown State Park is also historic in the sense that the Native Americans lived in our area, and the U.S. soldiers, that's where the battle took place at Battleground. And that whole area is where the Indian tribes came together under the prophet to work together and then ultimately fight the United States troops. So there was a large battle right in our area. Our time period depicts that move and migration east or west, and then the farms in the 1900s started. So the name Prophet's Town is where the Indian from Tecumseh's brother started the Prophet's Town there. And then ultimately, it was a great spot for the state to come in and buy property and create Prophetstown State Park. So it's almost started at the same time. So the farm at Prophetstown used to be called the Museums at Prophetstown. And we once had 300 acres of prairie. We had Native American village, and we also maintained the farm at Prophetstown. At the same time, the state was buying the property to create the state park, and ultimately it became a great partnership together. The park took over the prairie and the Native American village and left us doing business as the farm at Prophetstown. So it's quite a bit of history. As with many organizations, there's been a lot of change, and I think another resource of finding of the mission of the farm was I met with several of the founders, and they were hard to find. If you'd have been on our land in 1997, it would have just been field, and now it's grown up to what it is today over those years. But there was an original group of people who said, we want to preserve that 1920s farm and make sure that it's here for future generations. So I've met with several of them, talked with them about what they saw that they wanted the farm to be into the future, and we try to hold their mission true. Christine.
So on a normal day, how many volunteers and employees are actually working the farm and taking care of the livestock?
Yeah, so any given day that you come, the question is, you come to the farm, what are you going to see as far as workers and animals and the operations of the farm? So we want it to be somewhat self-guided. We have a lot of integrated signs. We don't have bold signs that stand out, but we have integrated signs throughout the farm that you're going to see. Learn about the corn crib and its use. Learn about the barn, as you saw the sign about the barn. We have regular paid staff who mostly take care of the regular grounds and the upkeep of the animals. With volunteers, sometimes it's challenging to have volunteers come in and take care of the animals because they don't know exactly their medications that they're taking or the feed and their diets. But we do have volunteers that work in the gardens and work on the grounds. And then upstairs in the two-story farmhouse, upstairs is our offices. A lot of people ask, what's upstairs? And I said, come on up, that's where we work, and I'll put you to work with something. It's really a self-immersive interaction, but all of our staff are trained and can answer all your questions as you come and visit the farm and learn about that time period of history and agriculture. You had a question?
Yeah, so you said that the barn itself was composed of 2 salvaged barns?
Correct.
So do you define this barn as a circa 1920, or is it older? And then are you saying that the offices are upstairs in the barn?
No.
Okay.
Very good. So great question. So our barn was built on site around 2000, and it was 2 historic buildings that were collapsing in southern Indiana. And the neat thing about our barn is when you come and visit, those who know and understand can see the different joints and the different time periods that those joints hold. So clearly one was pre-1880s, I would say, when you mark. And then one was maybe a little newer, around 1900, because you can tell by the joints that they used in that construction at the time. But no, our offices are upstairs in the 2-story farmhouse, the museum house.
So the second part of my question was a bit of a setup. You have a hay trolley in the top of the barn.
Oh, yes. I saw some of your pieces. Those are fantastic. We do have a hay trolley. We don't physically use it. It's there for demonstration, but there definitely is a track and the forks up top and the ropes come down, and we can demonstrate how that was done in the time period. So definitely come visit our barn and you'll see all of that. And I'll also pick your brain about your thoughts and what else we should add to it to make that a true picture of how it was used at the time. Great question. Yes?
You tell basically about my house is the years.
Oh, very nice. Oh, she knows a little bit about the farm. So the question is, there's 2 museum homes on the farm. One of the original founders was, if you know anything about Lafayette, there was a Sears on the levee somewhere, and one of the managers, Dale Gibson, was one of the founders of the farm. And he did not want the farm to be a Sears and Roebuck museum. He wanted it to be a farm, but since he was involved with Sears, it only made sense because a lot of the homes in the period could have been bought through the Sears and Roebuck home. So we have one house. It's our tenant house, and it is a representation of tenant farmers that would live on the farm at the time. They would come in, help work the farm, earn some money to ultimately purchase their own farm. And then the other house is a replica of the Hill Rose that you could have bought out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog. So a lot of history there with not only being farming, but also the Sears and Roebuck homes. There are still Sears and Roebuck homes, of course. Not all of those you can walk through and visit and touch and feel and see the magazines. I actually have from 1923 the letter correspondence of the tenant house. I've got the letter correspondence from the family and the purchase of Sears and the blueprints and the plans and everything that house, when you purchased a Sears and Roebuck home, it came to you on a rail car, and you get all the wooden pieces marked with numbers, and you had to put it together like a kit. So it's got a really neat history. How's my time?
You're good.
It's got a really neat history of the Sears and Roebuck home and how it fits in with history and agriculture.
So I read that you have farm to table dinners. Is that in the house or barn or how,
Yes.
how often do you have that?
Nice. So a question is, and some of you may have been at some of our farm to table dinners. Question is, do we do farm to table dinners? How's that work? And how often do we do that? So in the back, thank you, it jogged my memory. In the back, we've got our event calendars and our mission statement and a little bit more insight of what the plans are for in the future. So every month we hold a farm to table dinners, a farm to table dinner, and they usually have a different theme with them. They are the proteins off our farm, our meats and our beef and pork. And then either if we don't have our produce, we use local farmers to bring in that produce and everything to have that farm to table dinner. It's a 5-course meal, and it's set within the first floor of the Gibson house, the farmhouse. And it's a really unique experience. It's not like any other. It's usually a 2-hour event. It's not just coming to eat. It's really an event where you're going to eat on the china. Chickens are roaming around as you come in, and it's really going back in time and having a really good meal and enjoying that period of time. So usually they are indicated in our event calendar, but we'll post those on Facebook. As soon as they go up, they fill out. So it's really kind of hard. If you really wanted to go to a farm to table, you might take a look at our event calendar and say, I'll call ahead for next month and we'll try to get in. So thank you. Yes.
How many people can join that dinner at one time?
So a full house of our dinner is about 32. That's about really, you start squeezing people in, it really starts taking away from the experience. So it's a very intimate interaction with the farm and the farmhouse. So it's about 32 max that we can have at our farm to table dinners. Any other questions? Well, again, I want to thank you all so much and everything that you do for Indiana preserving history of agriculture. Come visit the farm. It's a wonderful place. I personally would love to sit down with you and get your perspective on things that you know that we could do to improve and make the experience for the visitors that much better. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Lee. Really appreciate that. And now we're going to have a break and 10 to 15 minutes. But I'd like for you to take advantage of it. Obviously, talk to people near you if you want to talk to board members. Steve Weber, Steve, hold your hand up, has this much of his display of hay trolleys. If you want to come talk to Steve, he'll be talking in a few minutes. But, if you want to get a little personal discussion here, these are all were all manufactured in Indiana. The ones he brought here was the reason he chose these. So, and then we've already mentioned Peg and Penn and Mark and his crew. Really appreciate their sponsorship of this meeting. Really helped us a lot with the expenses here anyway. So if you want to talk to Mark and them, anybody else then that you want to catch up with, but a couple of plugs for Danielle. Danielle, who's checking in the signs. We've got metal signs back there that if you'd like one, those are $30. And then if you notice, some of us have on wear different items of different types of shirts. Largely, there are caps. You can go on our website, and it really does. I enjoy wearing these because I have people ask me about the Indiana Barn Foundation, and I know others of you do who wear them. But we used to try to sell these. It's always hard, at a meeting like this, it's always hard to have the right size and everything. So again, I think that was Christy's suggestion, actually, on hooking us up with Freckles Graphics, who, if you go to our website and go to the store, you can order things from them. We don't make any money off of it, but at least we don't have to inventory things. So just would encourage all of you to do that. Buy them for yourself, buy them for your friends. It's just another way to help people know that we do exist. We've come a long way on that, but certainly a lot of people don't know about the Indiana Barn Foundation and don't know what we do yet. So, okay. I think with that, is there anything else, Christine, or any of the rest of the board that I need to mention right now? We'll be back. Mac's actually going to make the introduction of Mac Williams, of our next speaker, our keynote for the day. And so we'll come back to that in 10, 15 minutes. I'll just introduce another of our board members, Mac Williams, who, as we talk, one of the things that amazes those of us who get to do barn assessments and see a lot of barns, amazes me especially, is the number of hay trolleys that you see in barns. Almost all these historic barns have hay trolleys. And some of us are way more interested in hay trolleys than others of you, I know, but hopefully you'll all be very interested by the time we get done with this. So we started out with Mac maybe needing to do the presentation himself, but then we lucked out in getting Steve to come. So Mac's actually going to do the introduction, and I'm really looking forward to this. Mac?
So is this removable?
No.
Okay. Well, I brought along my old number one. This is probably, Steve probably, throws these away because they're so common. But this is a Porter hay trolley, and I discovered it in I think a flea market or an antique store probably 25, 30 years ago. And I'm going to put it down because it's heavy.
Here, do a few.
But, yeah. Seeing it for the first time, it's like, what is that? And it's like, oh, I think I've seen those before. They're in the top of barns. And that was kind of like my first introduction to the hay trolley. And it's like, I got to figure out how this thing works and learn more about it. And so I'm sure, when you learn about the people who collect these, it's like, okay, it's an addiction. It's a fascination. And in looking at the ones that Steve has brought, it's like, it's such a classic form and function thing. It's like, they're beautiful. And it just kind of reminds you of, I'm done. The evolvement of America and how people who innovated and invented and made themselves a lot of money by being the smartest people that invented things that helped farmers do their thing and made labor so much easier. And the thing about the hay trolley is barns are bigger because they made it easier to put a whole bunch of hay in a barn, and you could have more livestock because you could store hay much easier. And the thing is, so Kent mentioned doing barn assessments. So one of the first things I do when I walk into a barn is, well, at first I look down so I don't have the problem that stepping in something. And then I look up because I'm looking for the track and the hay trolley. And sometimes they're way up there in the dark nether regions of the barn. And it's, you take your phone out, you try to zoom in and see if you can tell what's up there and what it is. But it's a fascinating thing, and it's just a part of barn history and rural farm history that I find fascinating. And so without further ado, so happy to have Steve Weber here, one of the star collectors of this technology and a lot of farm stuff. He lives on a 5th-generation farm in Iowa City, Iowa. He's one of the co-founders, if you will, of a group of collectors called HayTrolleyHeaven.com. You got to check it out. Amazing amount of resources about hay trolleys, but just history in general of the rural heritage that created all this. And he has such a curated collection that he's like, well, I'm coming to Indiana. I'll bring ones that were made in Indiana. There were probably 100 manufacturers of these things at any, through its history. They ended up being consolidated into a lot of bigger companies. But he has some really rare hay trolleys. And before I have him come up, I also want to implore you to use technology, go on the internet. There are some YouTube videos featuring Steve. They are fascinating. And he tells the story of the Luden company, William Luden, who is from Fairfield, Iowa, just not too far away from Iowa City. He's like the inventor of the hay trolley, or certainly one of the innovators of it. And the stories that he's like a professional historian in my mind, because none of it was scripted. It was all Q&A, and his knowledge of the history of Luden and hay trolleys in general is it's amazing. So without further ado, please welcome Steve Weber. This is a picture of his museum.
Well, I grew up on a farm, and first job interview I had, the guy says here you were a foreman in high school. What's that mean? I said, well, farming, plowing the ground, tilling, planting crops, cultivating, harvesting, milking the cows, feeding beef cattle, messing with sheep, chickens. Oh, he says, you were a farmer. I said, yes. I said, my grades were not very good. I assure you that, because I was a wrestler, and I in my sport, and a farmer. As a wrestler, is a strong kid. At my age, I was pretty good at it. And ladies, I like girls and all that good stuff. So I was busy doing things other than I wasn't too scholarly, but they wanted living in college. And I remember in high school, everybody has boys and girls advisors in those days. This guy said, Weber, we recommend 95% of students from Iowa City High School go on to the University of Iowa. But he said, I would not suggest that in your case. So that sort of got under my skin a little bit, Later in life, he would have rolled over in his grave to find out that I got straight A's a senior year of college, and as the chairman of the college I went to for 4 years, he would flip his wig over it. That's me in a nutshell. Now we're going to talk about hay trolley heaven. We are in a very different group in that touched on it. We are organically grown. we're a little bit nuts, as he said, and we have a meet once a year, 3-day meeting, and the host says it's on Friday and Saturday, but people start showing up on Thursday. You know, this is like relatives that show up early for a family reunion. So at any rate, so here we go, but that's the way they are, because they buy, sell, and trade things, people show up.
About this one.
Pick up load after pick up load of hay trolleys, and they buy, sell, trade, and just have a good time. So another thing about our group, you wonder sometimes why we don't have a board, we don't have any formal thing going on, we don't have any fundraising, we don't have a treasury, we don't have any of those things. Because a second meeting we had at my place, I said, we're gonna get organized here. And so I said, Fortune 500, and I said, this. We got all organized with these little hidden objectives, transparencies, and the exercise is gonna be, let's get together and query the group. There's about 30 people, it's about this size. And we're gonna look at these trolleys and decide out which ones are common, which ones are fine, which ones are rare. I got the hay trolley number about 12 or 13. Somebody opened the back door and said, hey, Rudy's here. He's got a trailer full of trolleys for sale. Most people got out. I didn't think you could get out of the room that fast. And I was lucky I was in the front of the room, not the back of the room, and then run over me, you know? So I'm sitting there and I said, you know, I think I got a memo here, you know? They want to get together and have fun, but they don't want, we tried one other time to have some organized thing, you know? The same thing, everybody fell asleep and whatever, but, so we're a little nutty that way. Hay Trolley Heaven, the name, we started out with, we're gonna be the American Hay Tool Collective. And Barry was, Marinoff was our guy, and he did a lot of graphic arts for the factory, so he was an engineer. And this is what I was looking for. Here's, I'm gonna trip over that. So, yeah, I'm gonna get up. Right. I didn't want to do that. Look at the work. Can you still hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, well, I don't. Anyway, so where was I? Explaining the history of our name. So we started out, Barry's going to call it American Hay Tool. I said, what's the problem there? Barry said, what's that? The Canadians. We have a lot of Canadian friends, about 10% of it. Well, they might get irritated if we call it American Hay Tool. Let's call it the North American. Barry, oh, okay, we'll call it North American. And then later, we did a website, a .com website, and that's a story in itself, which I'm not sure. So one of the guys, the way the website came about, a guy called me up and said, hey, he's from Nebraska. He said, we got this new guy up in Maine, and he's sort of a pain in the neck. When you call this guy, he said, he's been bugging me, wanting hay trolley parts, and wants this pulley, and wants that gizmo, and he wants that clevis, he wants all this stuff. And I don't have time to mess with this. All right, I'll tell you, I'm retired. I was just starting his career out. So I did all this, I talked to him by telephone, get to know him. His name's Dan. That's a picture of his artwork that was up there at halftime. And Dan says, I need all this stuff. And I said, well, Dan, I'm not running a hardware store for hay trolley parts. However, you know, if you need help, I'll find a way to help you out. So sure enough, I had everything he wanted. I sent him an email and I showed him the pictures of the stuff that I was going to send him. And he sent me back the longest text I received in my entire life. It had to be that long, you know. And it started out with an English brogue. I am exceedingly grateful for your generous offer to sell me this stuff for $200 and dot, 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 dot. And I'm reading this thing, and down at the very bottom it says, and in exchange for all of this, I'm going to send you a $1,000 check to your favorite charity. So I read that, and the first thing I say, who is this guy? You know, us Midwest guys don't do business that way. You know, this guy is something else, this Maine guy. So we got to know one another, and he was a real brainy guy. And I did some research, and I found out he was a billionaire. I'd never met a billionaire in my life, but Dan was, and he had all these ideas about a website. He said, we're going to do a website. So, okay, I think that's a good idea. So we started working on the website, and I had hired a young lady from, she had moved back from California, her and her husband. They were out there. She's a web designer. They were starting to have a family, and they want to move back to the Midwest. Familiar story to everybody, I think, in the room that has relatives. And so here's Dan on the iPhone and Laura in Iowa City, and so we get all the way down, and he starts in trying to sell us on the idea of doing a website. And I said, Dan, yes, we're all in agreement. We're going to do a website. So let's spend our time talking about the website. Now, remember, I'm a Iowa farm guy, and he's a sophisticate from the East Coast. And okay, we can move right forward. Yes, we can. So anyhow, we got into it, and what really created the website wasn't me or Dan, either one. It was a snowstorm in the Northeast. And he sent me a picture when we were working of the window in his house. He said, look at this. Here's a window and it had snow halfway up. He said, now what's impressive, that's the second floor of the house, not the first floor. So I had this guy hostage for almost 2 months. We were on the phone all the time going back and forth. And he wanted to use GoDaddy. And I said, Laura said, well, we don't want to use GoDaddy. Why? He says, well, you're building a giant database. And if you use GoDaddy, they change the software every 2 years. You're going to have to reload it. Dan says, oh, okay, fine. So at any rate, we got to know one. But that winter, we put together an information thing, which was very instrumental in our history going forward. And we have a web, several of us that work on that. That's our research center, a data center. So if you want to know what trolley Mac held up, you go to heytrolleyheaven.com and you go in and you hit Porter. That's a Porter. There's a slider ball. Whoops, there it is. And you click on that, and there's a patent data and the whole thing, just as Mac was describing. That's how the website got done. And then a young guy came along later. We're about 6 years older than your group. A guy came along later, and he had a Facebook page called Cajun Hay Trolley. Now, I don't know how many have been down to Louisiana, but they don't put up a lot of hay down there. So, Cajun Hay Trolley wasn't exactly something to blow your socks off. He called me up and he said, say, can we use the name Hay Trolley Heaven on a Facebook page? I said, sure. About that similar. His name's Clint Flack. And Clint was a brainy young guy from Pennsylvania. And he's it's sort of a stay-at-home dad without children, with that sort of unemployed, his wife's school teacher. But he really loved this stuff. And so he did a tremendous amount of good. And I was talking to our round barn buddy over here, and he was talking about constant posting of things create a lot of interest in whatever you're doing. And so he would put out all sorts of stuff. But the only thing you found out about Clint, it was like if you told him, the whole world knew about it, whether you wanted the world to know about it or not, the whole world knew about it, And he helped us a lot. And we now we're approaching 10,000 members on our Facebook page, which is good. And we don't care about the numbers, but the research center gets 2,000 visits a month. And half of them are from new people, and half of them are from people that have used the website before. But Lisa is our webmaster. She's a Buckeye, grain elevator, commodity trading gal, lives home on the farm with her dad, brainy gal. She runs our Facebook page, and she keeps the statistics. And the thing that we're most proud of at Hay Trolley Heaven is we have as many 20-year-old members as we have 30-year-old members, as we have 40-year-old members, as 50-year-old members, 60-year-old members, and all of us guys. Jim is wave your hand. He's a grandfather of the group. He's 2 months older than I am. At any rate, us old guys, we're like 5% of the group, and we're sort of proud of that. We really are. So that's Hay Trolley Heaven and sort of who we are. Now I'm going to move on, if I don't break my neck here, and talk about, so I decided to bring these Indiana hay trolleys down here. And my first connection to Indiana, grew up on the farm. We got a TV set somewhere in the 50s. And there was a guy who I don't think, some of you may never heard of this guy. His name was Herb Schreiner. And Herb Schreiner was from Indiana, one of the early TV guys. And he would come out like this, and he'd either sit on a stool or put his foot up on a chair and he'd start talking. And you never knew where the bus was going. You got on the bus with him, you didn't know where this guy was going, but it was entertaining as all get out. And he died at 51. He reminded me of George Burns. They were the same age. And George Burns, a lot more people know because he was older. But George Burns was another guy that had come out and sat on a stool. He had a cigar and he just talked. So when Christine said, "Where's your PowerPoint presentation?" I said, "I don't do that. I do the Herb Schreiner, George Burns deal. I just go sit up here and talk." So, at any rate, that was my first introduction to Indiana. And believe me, in those days when you grew up and TV was new and everything, Indiana was foreign, Nebraska was foreign, the whole Big Ten thing was foreign to us, they show, "Oh, there's a guy from Nebraska. Never seen one of those, And any rate, that's the world I grew up in. So I decided to bring these trolleys from Indiana, and if you're still with me. So if you look at them, and some of them you see, and some of you don't. This is the oldest hay trolley in Indiana, and it's 1870, Violet's patent, Goshen, Indiana, manufactured by Krebs in. I knew about the patent of this. So this thing shows up at Chupp's auction house. How many have been to Chupp's auction house? Well, a few of you. Well, I had the pleasure and pain of bidding on this little beauty here, and $15,000 later, it went in my car and home she went, But at any rate, I knew about this, but I didn't know anything about the research. So a number of us were involved, but we went over to the Elkhart County Historical Society, and there's a young archivist there, and she is really good. And I said, I want to learn about John A. Violet. He's the guy that did this. And so she had lined all these books up, and I learned a lot about him. He's a homesteader. His dad stopped in Fort Wayne, Indiana, got on a horse, was headed for Iowa, but he passed Goshen. He stopped. He liked it there. The land was good. There was timber there. There was a stream running through town. And his dad envisioned a lot of things, so he homesteaded 350 acres. And his son, John, decided at age 20 or 21, the gold rush was on, 1850. So he says, Dad, I'm going west. And so he goes across land all the way to Mormon Island out there, digs for gold. A year later, he's ready to come home, and he'd gone overland. And so he said, I'm going to take a ship. I'm going to come out of San Francisco Bay and go right down to the isthmus, and you'd walk across in those days and catch a boat up the Mississippi River and come back home. Well, one thing happened on the trip. They got down, it was a sail ship, and he got down near the isthmus, the Panama, and a wind came out of the east and blew him all the way to Tahiti, if you can believe that. That's a long way if you know your geography. So here's old John on that boat, and he looked around, and the first thing he thought of was, Dad's got a lot of barns on the farm. He's got a chicken house, hog house, dairy barn, cattle barn, machine barn, shop here, shop there. He's got everything. Hell's bells. We ought to do it like this boat. We ought to have everything in one barn. So his idea, and he saw all these block and tackle things on the ship, putting sails up and down and cargo on and off and everything else. He said, I'm going to build one big barn. Well, the one big barn required a way of moving stuff around. So he built a barn there, and it was, I think I walked the footprint of it. It was like 250 foot long and 75 wide. It was a big barn. And he built the barn, and the idea was everything was going to be in the one barn. But he needed a hoist, so he came up with this hoist. And it's very unique. It runs on 2.5 by 3 1/4 track. Nobody did this. These are wood runners here on the side. I did them out of wood, but the real one's out of metal. This is concaved. It has a bump plate on the bottom. It has rollers that are very similar to the Loudon ones from Iowa. And this guy, Violet, and Bill Loudon from Iowa, and a guy by the name of Ricker in New York, and a guy by the name of Myers, not F.E. Myers, Myers Housel in Canton, Ohio, were the first 4 guys to invent hay trolleys. So this thing was born out of that. we found not only the information on John Violet, the biggest cemetery in Goshen, Indiana is the Violet Cemetery. It's about about a square mile. And John buried his dad over there, and he's buried there. And the interesting story is his tombstone is a rock. It's about this big, and it says John A. Violet, born, died, and that's it. And then you start looking at the relatives around him. Whoa, boy, those tombstones kept getting bigger and fancier and bigger and fancier. You can do a whole circle of them, you know. You can see where the money went, and then eventually you get back down to normal folks, you know. And, but the Violet, and there was the first hotel in Goshen, Indiana was a Violet Hotel. They built that. They were very charitable people and did a lot of give back to the district. He didn't sell many of these. They were too big, too expensive, too fancy, too everything. And this Krebs guy, he was selling grain registers, if you know what a grain register is. But at any rate, the first thrashing machines on the farm were communal. So everybody brought their bundles over and ran them through the machine, and they had to find out, you know, whose was Charlie's and whose was Harry's and who was Joe's. And he built them, and grain registers require foundry capability and a lot of machining and everything else. So Crepes manufactured these. Shockingly, we actually found in his personal papers. So John, he came back, and the first thing he did was build a mansion there in Goshen. And if you have a chance, I don't even know who owns it now, but the Historical Society does. It was a palatial place, the house. It's still there. And in the house were the papers, and that's where I found all the information on. And believe it or not, there was a flyer, an 1871 flyer showing this hay trolley. And the archivist and I both about flipped when we saw that. We just couldn't believe that. She was in another room, and I came with her and said, "Hey, we hit the mother lode." She said, "What do you mean?" She walked in and she said, "I can't believe it." I promised to bring this back to her someday. So Violet was one of the early guys that came up with the whole idea of a hay trolley. And that's why. And in the plot book, it's interesting. You can see his dad's farm with all these outbuildings. You can see his farm with the big house and the one barn. And I don't know what happened to the first one. I think it burned down. The second one was built on the same footprint in 1915, about the age of this barn. And it was all outfitted with Loudon equipment, because Loudon was much more in the commercial end of it. So that's Indiana's first hay trolley. Then there was a guy in town by the name of Herbert, says here, Herbert Myers and Company, Warsaw, Indiana. But he was an inventive guy, and he was from Goshen, and he was pretty good at inventing things, but he wasn't very good at selling stuff and marketing stuff and making money. So he sold the rights to this trolley to Goshen Manufacturing. And Goshen Manufacturing Company was run by A.P. Boyer. He was a Michigan State grad. He lived just outside in Michigan, about 20 miles from the border, and he came across and set up shop in Goshen because there was a foundry there with malleable iron. And A.P. Boyer got the patent rights from this guy, enhanced them, and went from this big clunky thing to things that were much more commercially saleable. And I was telling the guys at our table, somebody wonders how rare Goshen hay trolleys are. And about when I was new at this 20 years ago, I got in contact with a guy from Gas City, Indiana, and he said, "Say, I got a bunch of hay trolleys and I want to sell them to one guy." And of course, I was a top candidate of the one guy, so I get my trailer and I go down to his place, and this guy had hay trolleys everywhere. He had them in the garage, he had them in the chicken house, he had them in the barn, he had them in the basement of the house. He had, this is an all-day project, just dragging these trolleys out. And I said, "All right, pal, how are we going to come up to the money side of this?" He said, "Well," I said, "how about this? We'll make a $25 pile, a $50 pile, a $75 pile, $100 pile, and up. And we'll put them in the 4 piles and we'll go from there." So we're dragging these out all day. And this $75 pile just kept growing and growing. I kept looking at growing and growing. They're all Goshen, from Goshen, Indiana. And I said, as we were having lunch, I said, those things are not that rare. They need to go over here in this $50 pile, because I drug those things back to Iowa. And of course, nobody in Iowa had seen them, but I had a hard time getting rid of them. And I finally took a dozen of them and gave them to a guy in New York for a hay fork. He had a rare hay fork that he had. And he took them back and they sold pretty good in New York because nobody had seen a Goshen, so he got rid of them. Any rate, that tells you a little bit about that. So the two big epicenters in Indiana were Goshen in the later days, because Boyer came around about the turn of the century and commercialized the blue one over there, and it really took off. So down here in River City, this little guy says Lafayette, Indiana. That gets your attention, and he was the original inventor. The year goes back to '83. And for those of you that haven't seen, it's called the Hoosier Sliders. So you sort of, even if you're Iowa, you know where that's from. That came from Indiana in 1873. So he was early, a very early guy. And then also these are marked in at least 6 or 7 different ones. We have one just like this, says Dubuque, Iowa. It's got a white or wood roller in it. I don't know what that was all about. It says Faulkner on it. And Faulkner was a guy that made on a baby carriage, how the hoops go up and down on buggies. That was Faulkner. He was an inventor of that. And he traveled all over, and he ran into this guy down here in Indiana. And that's how he got hooked up with him and started selling them in Iowa. But these things are rare. My other favorite Hoosier slider story, Portland, Indiana. I'm sure a lot of you go to the Portland show or have been to the Portland show. And George was one of our older guys, and George says, say, I know a guy that has one of those Hoosier sliders. Yeah? He said, yeah, he claims it in his 2-car garage. Yeah? And it's covered up with stuff. And I've been after him for years and couldn't find it. So I said, and George was always trying this or that or something else. So I wrote the guy a letter. And I said, if you can find that Hoosier slider, I'll give you $1,000 for it. George would never have thought of that. So at any rate, I'm at Portland. I'm walking down the row of stuff. And this guy, he came like he was shot out of a cannon. Where did he come from? He said, do you remember me? I said, yes, I do. He said, you sent me a letter. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. He said, do you remember what you said? I said, yes, I do. So at any rate, he goes over out of the truck and he's carrying this Hoosier slider and it's all screwed up. Somebody took it apart and put it together backwards or something. So I give him the $1,000. He's there. There's a bunch of these pickers around. They said, hey, anybody got a adjustable wrench? So I'm sitting there, and all these guys are like they're looking at a dead duck. They're like, what is that thing, And so I'm taking the thing apart and putting it back together. And I said, it's a Hoosier slider. It's a what? It's a Hoosier slider from here in Indiana. Yes. Where are you from? Iowa. How do you know that? I said, well, it says, I just know it's a Hoosier slider. So we put the thing back together. But us people are funny, and our only the hay trolley guys, hay trolley heaven. Everybody else says, what's your mission statements? To have fun. We have a lot of it, more than we should. So Jim and I, we decided Jim was going to do a round barn tour of New York, and I said, okay, how long is that going to take? Well, you come on up, and you're going to stay overnight at my place, and the next day we're going to go the Canadian route over to New York, and we're going to visit 14 barns. And so we were looking around, and I'm mixing them trips up because Vermont's where we got the round barn thing from the lawyer. Anyway, it was a Vermont trip, and we went through Vermont. And Jim is very good at this because he just walks up and says, I'm Jim Gray. I'm from Detroit. I collect hay trolleys. I like round barn hay trolleys. And if you got one, I want it and I'll pay for it. Well, that's pretty clear. It's the first thing they do. We'll go see if we have one, So they go and look at these guys. You want that thing up there? And he says, yeah, you got to. He said, but we're working for this lawyer, and we're going to have to call him up, And as soon as he says that, he said, ooh, this could take a while, And so at any rate, Jim says, yep, it's way up there. Yep, that's what we want. And he said, well, we got to call the boss. And he said, Jim said, well, you tell the boss that we're only going to be in the neighborhood for an hour, and we're driving down the road. If you want to sell that thing, you better get off at dead center. So I'm out photographing something. It was a beautiful time of year. The leaves were out, and we're just having a great time. And Jim yells out the window, "Hey, it's the lawyer, yeah? He wants to sell the trolley. He wants $300 for it. What are we doing?" "We're buying." "That's what we're doing. We're buying." "Okay." So we go back. And these two guys were funny. They were in their 40s, and Jim was a lot older than they were. They were afraid to go up the ladder. So Jim goes up the ladder, we get the thing down, and they get it, these two young guys get it down there. The lawyer got skinned on this deal because he paid them a lot more than $100. We took 2 hours to get that thing down. These guys looked over and said, "That is what you're after?" We said, "Yes, that's what we're after." He said, "But it's missing 2 wheels." And Jim said, "You see this guy here? He's got a 5-gallon bucket full of those wheels. Don't worry about it." So, and then the other one I remember was we were in New York, and he had organized that trip, and we did 14 barns, and we got out of the last barn we went to, and I didn't know how thorough he was at doing this. And we get out of the truck, Jim and I were walking. These kids come running out, "Grandpa, Grandpa, Grandpa." I said, "Well, they got us pegged all right." And the kids, and there's a young couple there, and they had 1 horse, 1 cow, one chicken, one this, one that, one everything. And he says, "So what are you after?" When Jim does the drill, "Hay trolley." "Well, I don't know if we got one or not." So he goes in, we looked up, no hay trolley, which most of them don't have a round barn hay trolley in them. And the guy says, "How many barns do you visit in New York?" He said, "This number 14. And the kid said, "Well, that's all there are." Jim says, "How do you know that?" He said, "Before we bought this place, we checked it out. We went and visited all around barns in New York, and there's 14 of them." I said, "Well, he knows what he's doing." He was a logistics guy for Corian in Detroit. He knows his stuff. So, any rate, we just have a lot of fun in our group, finding these things, celebrating them, and let's talk just a bit. So, when I started out, there were about 4 of us that built museums for hay trolleys, and are major. I'd say we're in the 300 range, 400 range. But we're now where we're about 4 a year being built around the country, hay trolley museums. We just had our show down at Carl Wagner's in Missouri. He just finished his. Dave Wilson in Des Moines. Doc and I are supposed to go next week or the week after. I don't know if we're going to make it or not. He's building his. Margaret's been working on hers. She's one of our Indiana players. And then we got a guy in Kansas. He's going to collapse the roof. He started from scratch. And about a year ago, no, 18, we come to a show. He's a great big man. He says, "I want to talk to you." I said, "Well, can I unload my stuff and then we'll talk?" So he plants himself in front of me and he says, "I've been watching these videos." He said, "And I really like hay trolleys." He said, "I'm up to 75 already." And he said, next time I saw him, he says, "I'm up to 200 already." He does 3 a week and posts them on Hay Trolley Heaven. He polishes them all up and hangs them up and everything else. And so the garage is full, and his wife's a smoker, and she has a little veranda, and he's eyeing this 12 by 12 veranda, saying, "Honey, can we hang him up there?" She said, "No, no, you can't hang him up." So at any rate, we're a little bit crazy. So now I'll stop talking about what I want to talk about, and no question is crazy, but what would you like to know about hay trolleys? You got to be like the 10-year-old kids I had from one of the middle schools came out, and a teacher she asked me, "We want you to come to town and give a lecture on levers and pulleys." And I said, "I don't want to do that." I said, "Why don't you bring the kids out to the farm? I got a whole building full of them." These 10-year-old came in, and it was Art Linkletter all over again. The teachers were in the corner. These kids started asking questions. The teacher, "Oh my, how'd you do this? What did this place cost? Where did you get all these things?" They're 10-year-old kids. They're just great. So pretend you're a 10-year-old, and what do you want to know about hay trolleys? Who's going to be first? Yes, Mac.
Can you talk a little bit about how marketing made such a big difference with all these manufacturers?
Yeah. So earlier, somebody asked me. So there are about 350 inventors going back, and the inventive period was from the Civil War on up to about 1910. That's when a lot of these were invented. Out of that, by the time railroads came in around 1900, 8 companies were probably doing 80% of the business. And they were the ones that had railroad access and so forth. In the early days, this early Goshen by me, Violet and Loudon were early guys. They would have a little shop somewhere, and some farmer would come in and it'd say hay tool works or something. They'd say, I want a hay trolley. And literally, he'd say, well, how about next Wednesday? And he'd put one on his buggy and he'd drive over to the farmer's barn and he'd deliver the trolley. And he'd tell him what he was going to need to set up for track and a lot of the early ones in the early days had counterweights on them. So it was very personally done by the inventor. Then Loudon and Myers out of Ashland were the two big ones. They started making catalogs. And there's a story behind each company in the catalog. They started making catalogs. And then the way those companies went was through hardware stores because it was local. And you needed somebody to explain to the farmer how to buy them, how to install them in the barn, what kind of pulleys they were going to use. They sold them hay forks and everything else. So it sort of went pretty much down the road of hardware stores where the distribution all the way up until the railroads got fully integrated into our country around 1900. And then there were a couple guys up in Wisconsin that didn't have the railroad access that came up with the idea of mail order. So everybody's seen a Sears, Roebuck, and Montgomery Ward catalog. So a lot of the manufacturers beat a path to those two outfits wanting to sell their trolleys because they could envision, it's like selling cameras to Chinese. There's a lot of them over there, We can just figure out how to sell them a toothbrush or a camera, we'll be rich. So that was Montgomery Ward and Sears. Everybody wanted to sell stuff over there. So half the market sort of went that way, and the other mail order guys went the mail order way. And the mail order guys, in the catalogs, there was a complete description, an engineering drawing, a description of the trolley, how to install it in the barn, how to ta. But when you get to the Sears and Montgomery Wards, the conversation was crisp, the description was crisp, the stuff was cheap, it was made lightweight, it was mailed to you, and you bought it, you own it, and if it busted in a year, you buy another one. Where have we heard that before? The Walmarting of the day. But that's the way they were marketed. And the last one to end the story, the last one was, we're in the Sears catalog, and Montgomery, they stopped selling them about 1953. There was no sharp line that was the end of it. But when Sears and Wards stopped putting them in their catalogs, the heydays were over of putting up hay that way. So that's a little quick run through of how they were sold and marketed. Yes.
Can you just describe a little bit on how they were used, the process? I have a lot of arms and I have a lot of babies and I don't really know anything about them.
Yeah, okay. The question is, how did these things work and how were they invented? And I'll do that real crisply. So the farmers that came from Europe did everything by hand. They would they would use sickles to cut the stuff. They'd use rakes, large wooden rakes to rake it up. Then they'd use a pitchfork put on a wagon. Then they'd go to the barn. It was all put up with a fork about that long. It was done physically. So America, which is the greatest place on the face of the earth, people said, there's got to be a better way to do this. This is getting ridiculous, They invented a horse-drawn mower, so they didn't have to do that anymore. Then the problem was raking the hay, because you could do all this stuff in 2 days with a horse, but who's going to rake the hay? So then there was about 20-year lapse in raking the hay. Then they got hay loaders, and they're still, so now it's on the wagon. How do you get it up? How do you get it up in the hay mow? So all these block and tackle systems had one thing in common. They would pick a load up with a hay fork. They would raise it up to the barn. There's a little trolley in most barns. It engages in the trolley and it goes click, and then the weight is transferred from the rope to the trolley, and there's slack on the rope, and then you'd pull the rope back in. And there's somebody in the hay mow, and there's somebody down below operating the hay fork, or sticking the fork, as we called in our day. And you'd trip the rope, and it'd drop the bales or loose hay. Then you pulled the trolley out with the trip rope, and it come to the front of the barn, and it hit a thing we call in the trade a knocker or a stop. And that did two things: stop the trolley, released the pulley, the traveling pulley and fork, and it went down for another load. And some of the early ones, one of the earliest ones out east, was first patented as a device to retrieve well water. Do the same thing. You send an empty bucket down, you fill it with water, you pull it up, you got to pull it over and dump it somewhere and bring it back, empty thing down, go down. But the Bill Loudon was one of the early inventors, and he was had a lot of physical disabilities and arthritis as a teenager, so he couldn't do any work. So he sat there and watched his relatives do all this stuff, and he said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So he was one of the early inventors of, we're going to use horses and block and tackle and find a way to get this off the back of farmers so it would go up, over, and down. So
That's interesting, because my great grandfather was also disabled, fell out of the barn when he was little, and so that maybe why we have so many of them.
yeah, oh, exactly. This Loudon guy was something else. And to extend the story a little bit, so he came up with the idea, and a lot of these inventors had ideas, but then they faded. But he had a brother down in Kansas City that was a lawyer, and he was a real estate guy, so he knew how to do business. And he came back, and the two of them really worked well together because he knew how to do catalogs, he knew about sales and marketing, and Bill did all the inventing and so forth. And I don't think management was his, but the company just took off. They were very, very successful, and as was Myers, and there's 8 or 9 other companies. But somebody in the group had to, in addition to being an inventor, had to have the mindset and knowledge about how to get these things out, how to get them sold and marketed and so forth. So that brother duo, brothers don't always get along, as we all know, but that set of brothers got along just great. And it's funny because I just worked on the Loudon, on the lawyer's house down there. A young couple bought it and they're rehabbing it and so forth. So this is typical. So the inventor lived in a little frame house right across from the factory and walked to work every day. His brother, who was also, he lived downtown, and he had a big fancy house, and there's a tunnel in the house, so he could go from the breakfast table through the tunnel to a heated carriage house that had his horses and heated carriage in it. And he'd get in his carriage, and he'd go over to work and get dropped off, and the guy'd go back home. I can just see in the wintertime, this guy was living the dream, and his brothers walking to town. But the two of them made a really, really good pair to develop the business and make it work. So, but there you go. Yes, question.
I'm from the Crawfordsville area, I wondered if you could make more history of that.
Yeah, Crawfordsville is one of my weakest, but the Hoosier Sliders started there, and they sold a lot of those locally. And I don't know very much about that because I haven't had time to do research. I couldn't find hardly anything on the internet. The Browers, which was also from Crawfordsville, the Browers is 1883, so it came along later, and they were much more successful. You find a lot more Browers, but even Browers, what on earth are they selling for these days? Browers, $1,500, $2,000, something like that. They huh?
The pulleys at least far.
Yeah, just the pulley, the little pulley that goes with it. I always tell people, you're not going to find one of these at the hardware store. A crazy looking thing. But they had a lot of success, and they were from Crawfordsville, and they're called Browers. They sold a lot more of those. I know very little really about it because I haven't had the time to look. But somewhere down there, if somebody does some digging around, I'm sure you'll find something on them. And it's an area that I wish we knew a lot more about them. Obviously, we have all the patent stuff on the Hoosier Slider, and the Browers from Crawfordsville. So we know the patent stuff. We've not seen a catalog. I don't think we've seen a catalog on either one of them. Maybe on the Hoosier Slider.
Yes,
But we have it on the Hoosier, but not on the Browers. So we're missing a lot of stuff. And so anybody that wants to poke their head in on it, do. Anything? Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about what it brought, what it brought, excuse me, what it brought about the demise of the hay trolleys?
Okay, the question is, what sort of ended the hay trolley era? And sure as hell, there's another guy from Iowa, Vermeer. He invented the round bale. And what happened to most of the hay lofts, except in the Amish community, is they started producing these bales that weighed 1,000 pounds, or 500 pounds, or 1,200 pounds, depending on the moisture content of them. And these things got principally stacked outside or in makeshift hoop barns where you take a forklift. And my neighbors are dairy farmers. They finally, the two of them quit, but Viola, she was a little gal. I don't think she weighed 80 pounds. And her job was to haul the bales from the field. The boys would load them up, and she was on a truck, and she'd come down that gravel road. Oh, you'd see his dust flying, and you couldn't see anybody in there because Violet she was driving the truck, you know. And you knew when she went around the corner too fast because a couple of round bales in the ditch, you know. And she didn't let any grass grow under her feet, and she milked all the cows. And her husband was a very wise guy. He had rubber mats in there where the cows came in, and he had everything automated way before anybody else. But Violet would go in there and milk sun up and sun down, milk cows. But yeah, basically it was the introduction of round bales that caused the demise of that. And I have run into a couple Canadians that actually put them up in the haymow and unroll them and then use them that way. But no one else hardly that I know. So hence the end of the haymows. And then, as you guys know from being in the barn business, as the farm equipment, especially tractors, got bigger and bigger, they couldn't put them in there anymore. And then people are looking at, well, what are we going to do? Well, we're not going to spend any money on that because it's not a very usable space. And it caused a lot of the barns to disappear. But it was really the introduction of the round barn. And then the other thing that happened is when the farmer got to the end where the hemp rope would bust, he said, are we going to do this? So he said, I'm tired of messing with that thing. Let's cut a hole inside the barn, put the grain elevator up there, and we're going to send them up in the grain elevator, and we're not going to mess with that trolley anymore because I don't know what the rope cost, but it was cheaper to cut a hole in the barn and shove the elevator than it was to go buy new rope. So I think those are probably the two biggest factors that brought an end to them. But fortunately, our history still resides in a lot of these barns that haven't gone down. Somebody asked, I said, well, our guys in particular like barns that have already gone down. I said, they go over, sawzall, cut holes in the roof, you know, they'll crawl underneath there and they'll thief out that piece of history and save it. So there's a lot of that goes on. Another question.
How many, it seems to me the oldest ones that at least I've seen are wooden.
Yes.
You know, have a wooden rail.
Yeah.
Did everybody start with a wooden rail, or did like Loudon and some start with metal?
That's a very good question. Question is, the early ones were wood. I've got a wall about this big, and it's got 35 wooden hay trolleys on it. And the age group of the wooden ones would surprise you, because Loudon's early ones were wood sliders, and then there's a few East Coast producers, Arnold and some others that made wood sliders, but some of them are, you know, I call it, they never got the memo down there, you know. I mean, somebody invented one in 1883, and by then we had all this kind of stuff going on. And you said, well, that's interesting. And the one I got was, what the heck was that guy's name? At any rate, he was down in Viola, Tennessee. I remember that. And I can't remember the name of the trolley, but it came on and the crowd went wild. It was a wood one from down there. And I think it had an 1890 patent date on it or something. It had a big gear on it, you know, and came up and hit a kick plate and that released the gear so that it run. It was crazy. And I thought, well, I'll do the history on that. So I dug around and I found a gal by the name of Violet, whatever the name of the hay trolley is. So I said, well, she must be a relative. The town, 800 people. I'm going to look her up. So I did. I tried to look her up and found out she was in prison for shooting a 75-year-old. I said, well, I better stay away from that. You know, we'll leave that dead dog lie. But so it's a good question. And see, the thing that drove the industry technically was malleable iron. The early ones were made out of gray iron that's used for engine blocks and stuff like that, but it doesn't have any flex. And the malleable iron companies were not that many around. So when you got away from that and got rural, there were still people. And I got some beautiful Indiana ones. I never even thought to bring those. I mean, they're huge, you know. And some guy right down there in Huntington or that area down there, he was making them out of wood. And so there another guy didn't get the memo, you know, because by then there was a lot of stuff being made out of cast iron. So they span quite an age group. There's only 2 or 3 of us that are into that. It's a joy of my life, those, because they're just a great piece of wood. So I get them, and my job is to find out who made this thing, what the patent date was, what the town was. And like our friend Rick Plant brought one that he had bought in an antique store for $40 and he didn't know what it was. And finally, I found the patent date on it. And it's a crazy, funky thing because it's square, had rollers on top. So the early ones with rollers on top couldn't go into the barn more than 20 or 30 feet as long as you could cut a plank because there was no way for hangers except on one end and the other end. And it fell out of one of my file folders. I said, there it is. There, that's what he's looking for. He's been offered like 3,000 or 4,000 for it now that he knows what it is. And I made a replica of it and put the town in Maslin, Ohio, if I recall right. I can't remember the name of the trolley. So all those wood guys come to me, and I'm working on 3 of them right now because I'm the old man in the group, and I have the patience and the passion to figure out where this thing came from. And then we make copies of them. Jim and I are doing, 2 or 3 of them now from the last show all showed up, and we're working on them. But we're always excited to find out who actually made this thing. And believe me, there were people that laid in bed at night thinking some of these things up. Some of them are dang complicated. You take the wood, the springs pop out at you and everything else, stuff they picked up from the farm, you know, to make stuff out of. But so the wood ones are fascinating, but they span quite a period of time, and they go from elegantly simple to horribly complicated. And I'm working on one right now. My wood guy, we dug it out. We sort of know what it is. And he turned to me, and Doc Gill's my sidekick here. He's a dentist. He said, this guy's a dentist made this. Nobody else would know how to make all these fillings and inserts out of wood and blocks and all that. This guy had to be a dentist, you know. Well, probably was. Next question. How are we doing on time?
We're okay.
Okay.
Well, okay, one of the other things that amazes me is for a lot of these, the number of pulleys that it took to actually make this work. And I know a lot of people have gone into barns where you see, like 3/4 inch metal hooks.
Yeah.
And I'll just comment sometimes on that being a hook for a pulley.
Yeah.
Which, a lot of people have just forgotten about. But how many differences were there in pulleys, and how many did it take for a lot of these to operate?
Okay, there's 2 really good questions. How many did it take to make a hay trolley operate? Well, obviously you had the trolley itself, and you had what we call the insert pulley that went into it. Those were generally made out of metal. And so you have all those pulleys, and then you have the answer is many, many, many. We call them line pulleys. So you had to have one pulley in one end of the barn. Here's the trolley. So you had one there to pull it. And then a lot of people had a pulley to take the rope down to grade. And some took it out the back of the barn. Somebody had another pulley and ran it up the front of the barn. So that when you're backing the tractor up and the load's going up, you could see what's going on. And I was well trained in that as a young man. I ran my dad was an incredible trainer. and used few words. And so he said, you see this tractor, we're going back there. He said, you see that 2x4 on the ground? Yeah. He said, if you go past that, you'll pull that damn hay trolley right on the end of the barn. And there'll be more to it than that, I tell you, if you do that. So well, that's clear enough, you know, that's clear enough. But they had this whole series of pulleys, and then to give you an example of these attendant pulleys that lay around the countryside. So let's see, I'll tell that Margaret found a pulley in a hardware store. She called me, what is that? I said, that goes to an Ohio trolley, and it's screwy because it has a bell. Normally the trolley has a bell and the prong goes up in the bell. This one, the trolley had the prong and the bell went up. And I said, she said, what do you want to do with that? And I said, well, she's working on her museum. I said, we'll take that over to the hay trolley show, and that'll bring some real money. And so we set that trolley out there, and somebody comes back, what do you want for that? $800. Sold. You know, yeah, I grabbed it. You owe me 800 anyway, so now we're even. So he took it. He turns it around, and I saw there was another guy on the corner of my eye, and he had the trolley. He was over there and grabbed it and said, well, that works, that works. So he sold that guy for $1,000, you know. So to answer your question, there's a lot of them, but some of them are worth a lot of money. Yeah, especially the rare ones that go with them, and you'll find those. They usually get attached from the hay fork when they take the fork down, and then somebody takes it loose, and then the pulley goes one way and the trolley goes the other way. Yes, sir.
Can you comment on the different types of forks that were used?
So the question, it's a good one. How many different kinds of hay forks were there? The answer is a lot. They were patented. Jim Moffett was a grain bin salesman down around Springfield. He did all the research for me on trolleys. There's 350 trolleys were patented. And when he did it, he was pretty darn good at it. Hay forks, he did the hay forks. There were 635 hay fork patents. So you take a piece of iron or steel and stick it into a pile of hay, and boy, they did that every way you can think of. I mean, there are some fascinating hay forks, and there's some rare ones. And most of them, the kind with chains that I used growing up for a kid, those are like $3. They don't sell for anything. I thought if anybody drags one more of those down my driveway and tries me to take it, the answer, no, I'm not. You can kill yourself with those things. You pick them up, you know, you get poked in the side. And but there were many, many of them, and many of the old ones from the Civil War era and around there are worth real money. Some will go $200, $300, $400. And the super rare ones, we just had a guy sell his stuff out in Pennsylvania, and he had a barn this like 3 times this long, full to the ceiling of stuff and hay forks, and he had some really rare stuff, and it sold for big bucks. So many, thousands and thousands. But when you get down to the 8 guys at railroad time that were selling 80% of the stuff, they had about 4 or 5 different designs, and they all sold the same stuff because it worked. It's simple in design and foolproof and operated. So, but originally there were tons of them, and it just fascinates you when you see some of them. Some of them look like an umbrella upside down, you know, and you poked it in the crazy stuff. I doubt that it worked, but a lot is the simple answer. Next question. Yes, sir.
What year was the $15,000 purchase, and what's the most expensive?
Well, you're probably staring at it there. That was a couple of years ago. And I try to get the story out of it. These Amish guys are, you know, there's a lot of Amish pickers and Chups Amish that feed that place. Jim and I call it the Amish Mafia. You know, they get together and they find this stuff, which is incredible, and then it comes up to national audience. And of course, we literally have people in every state that collect hay trolleys, and so they all know they haven't seen one of those before, and then they get on there and start chattering about it. You know, as they're chattering, the price is going up, 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 and then finally it gets sold. But that's where that one came from. And some of them get a little ornery. And my Amish buddy, the one that cleared out my deal, when I was trying to have a meeting, Rudy, I said, do you know that guy? He's a guy who came on. Yeah, I know that guy. He said, I have very good luck with him. You know, he's a little, I said, well, I've decided to buy him a Christmas present. And Rudy, my Amish friend, says, what's that? I said, I think I'm going to buy him a Bible. And Rudy burst out laughing, you know. He said, that's perfect. You know, the Amish do have quite a sense of humor. He said, well, the guy could use a Bible. You know, he's a little bit ornery. Yes, sir.
How much do you do to restore these? These are nicely painted.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
were they originally that finished? And do you recast parts? Or how much restoration do you do?
The question is about restoration, which is a great question. Yes to all of the above, to everything you said. I decided early on, and we celebrate these any way anybody wants to do them. But I had a friend, early friend, when I started collecting. His wife did hog oilers. If any of you know what a hog oiler is, she did hog oilers, and he did hay carriers. And she said, Steve, let me put it this way. She said, if you want women and children to look at these things, I highly suggest you clean them up and paint them and letter them so they can read them. And that stuck with me. I thought, yeah, that's right. And I do want children to be interested in these things. And we just got back from Carl's, and he did his museum. He keeps everything original, whatever, you know, he brushes them. We have guys that do everything to them that you could think of, from sandblasting them. Jim takes his apart and he puts them in a cement mixer with gravel and lets them roll around for 24 hours. And that is the quintessential poor man's way to sandblast a hay trolley, but it works damn good, you know. He gets done, it's pretty damn good. Then we got a new guy. He's the guy that's doing 3 a day. And he calls me up. He said, hey, I don't know if I tell you this or not, but he said, you know, it takes a long time to take these things apart. The bolts are all rusty, and I've got enough skinned up knuckles. I sure know that. He said, why? He said, you know, a lot of guys paint these, and I don't like to paint. I'm going to get the paint off of me. He said, so I've got not a torch, but it's a sort of like a flamethrower that you use if you burn prairie or you go out in that. He said, I roll that thing around on the concrete out there. This is the guy that was trying to put them up, and his wife said, no, you're not putting them there. Anyway, he rolls these things around the floor. He said, you know, in about 10 minutes, I let that puppy cool off. And he said, it only takes me 10 minutes to take them apart now. He said, it loosens them up just enough and burns the paint off of them. So we've got people that love doing what I do. We got people that love wire brushing them. They wire brush them, they oil them, they paint them. And people come around to me and say, what do you think? And I said, well, you can do anything you want to. I said, is it going in the house? They said, yeah. And I said, you better sandblast and paint that, you know, or your wife won't have any part of it. And generally that's true. There are some exceptions, but not many. So we celebrate these things. And Carl's museum, he sent pictures of it, and it's about the size of this room. It would blow you away. It is just beautiful what he did, you know. And the way I do them, people come in and my place blows them away because they're saying, so we celebrate doing it any way you want. And every once in a while we get some wise person on there that start telling people how to do stuff. And we've only had to kick about 4 people off of our Facebook page. but yeah, we can take a lot, but we can't take a lot of that, you know. You know, we're here to have fun. So anybody starts interfering with that, you know. One of these guys, he's been bingoed 4 different times. I mean, we're compassionate. We let him back. He did it again. We let him back. He did it again. But out of here, you know, 3 strikes, you're out. We're not putting up with that. But he's always criticizing people. Yes, we cast parts. If things are busted, like if something were busted on that, you're not going to find it. So a lot of times if you find a super rare trolley like that and one side smashed up and you're lucky enough that both sides are mirror images, then you cast the other side and put it together. That would be the exception. But many of these have many, many parts that are busted, and you can cast them, or you can have a blacksmith try and, you know, reconnoiter them back to what they were. But, you know, every question you ask, the answer is yes. Somebody does that in our group. And then we had an Amish guy, Gideon, and he made a new discovery one year. He took his he was into apple peels, or not apple, potato skins. He said, you know, if you put that in a tank of water with potato skins, you know, that seems to loosen things up a little, you know, sort of makes one heck of a smelly mess, but it, you know, so Gideon left a batch in the stock tank over the winter, and the next spring he pulled them out, you know, and after the ice had mowed, he said everything was loose, all the wheels loosened up and everything else. So I made a post on that, but it didn't catch on, you know. Most of our guys are not that patient, you know. They want to do it and do it now and enjoy it. So, but yeah, we have people that do all of the above. Jim runs the Pony Express into Canada. We've got casters up in Canada, and people want knockers done. They pulleys. A lot of times the pulleys are chipped or busted that are metal, and we have those cast. So, other questions? Yes, in the back of the room.
Do you have the museums on your website, all the different ones, because you mentioned several?
I can't hear you, hon.
With the museums, do you have them listed on your website, since you have mentioned several?
No, we don't. The question was, are any of these museums that we have listed on our website? No, it's a great question. They probably should be, but some of the people like visitors, some of the people don't like visitors. But we're getting to the point now where we have enough of them. We probably ought to do that. That's probably a good idea. How many of you got Farm Collector magazine over the years? Yeah, a few, not many. And one of the couples that came to see me, this is really a quick story. He called me up. He's from New York. He says, I and my wife get Farm Collector magazine, so we discovered you hay trolley guys, and we want to come out, and we're going all the way to California, and we're coming all the way back, and we're going to stop at Old Threshers and Mount Pleasant. That's one of the biggest steam shows in the world, and we want to stop for a visit. That would be fine. So they stop in on the front end of the thing. We show them the pavilion and everything. And I ended up buying a bunch of trolleys from him. Fultonville, New York, it had a funky looking trolley. But at any rate, they come through, and I have a little guest house. Looks like a German hunting lodge. It's pretty cool inside. And I showed them the trolleys, and I showed them that. And they said, well, we're set up down there, and we got a tent down there, and we're going to camp down there at Old Threshers. So that's good. And it was about like today, you know, it's hot and so forth. And I didn't realize that these two Yukon grads, you know, traveled with a tent and, you know, a couple of cots. And so I walked his wife in the bedroom. I said, you know, you could stay down there at Mount Pleasant, or if you want, you can use the guest house. And she turns to her husband. He said, well, we already set the tent up. She said, you're going to go sleep in the tent. I'm sleeping here tonight. First time on the whole trip, she got to sleep in a bed, you know. Oh, God. Yes.
Time for one more.
Okay, final question. Who's going to do it? Yes, sir.
Is there a link between like a hay fork and the hay trolley as far as they're done? For example, you know, you buy a hay trolley, they come in, are there some came in a set, kind of like a car?
Yeah. Great question. Were the hay trolley and the hay fork paired up? And I'd say after 1900, the answer is probably most of the time, because by then they were in the catalogs, and each manufacturer, whether it was Porter or Loudon or whoever it was, Goshen, they would offer hay forks in their catalog. So when they got it, it wouldn't necessarily be a Goshen or a Myers hay fork, but they all sold the same stuff because the hay fork guys had also consolidated. And it's funny, one of the biggest sellers of hay forks at the end was from Valparaiso, Indiana. They sold a ton of them. That was the one with the 4 forks and the chains that were hooked on them. So the answer is, once the railroads came in and it was the turn of the century and stuff were sold in catalogs, they were pretty much paired. But before that, you know, Johnny bar the door, it could have been anybody's hay fork and anybody's trolley that were hooked together.
So does that increase the value, or do you find very many that are in sets, or are they pretty much all separated by now?
They're pretty much all separated by now. And
tell if they were ever originally together? kind of like a car with a.
No, only if you find them in the barn, they got paint on them. Then you pretty much know. Yeah, those were made at the same time. Probably came out of the same catalog. And although the manufacturers weren't the same, they were paired together from the get-go. All righty.
Let's give Steve a big hand. Thank you.
Well, really what he was talking about was technology at the time that was really a major impact on agriculture over about a 50, 60-year period there, from basically the end of the Civil War up into when hay started being baled, whether it was round or square with a stationary baler. That really started to begin to change things for hay trolleys. But if you think about, especially, you can look at some of the picture Mac has over there, hay hoods. There was no reason to have a hay hood unless you had a hay trolley. So, that was one big change. Anyway, then you also, if you think of just the typical English style barn that, you can see back and most of you've seen, those maybe after hay trolleys, maybe before, most of them might have wood floors, the very old ones, before hay trolleys. They'd have lofts, certainly after hay trolleys, but you'd have to unload in the aisle. Then once you had a hay hood, you could have a loft over the entire barn at that point. And, there's just a lot of innovation that came about that had to do with the hay trolley. So I think it's just valuable for us to think about how some of that worked out in agricultural history and the way that technology of the day changed things. Okay, we've got another little break built in here. So we'll give you a chance to go to the restroom, grab something else. We'll come back and we'll handle the annual meeting portion of this meeting, which is of course what it's for. And, really you're supposed to, as an organization, have an annual meeting each year. So we'll do that, and then we'll all eat here anyway, which I'm looking forward to, certainly. So thanks again, Steve. Appreciate you and everybody who came.
Annual meeting of the Indiana Barn Foundation. In a way, I hate to get started with this, but one person that meant so much to me as far as introductions go, and by extension, the reason this organization has existed really since 2013, although it was 2015 before we got our not-for-profit status. But at the beginning, there were other people involved, but I always say for me, Maury Williamson was the reason I got involved to begin with. And like me, Maury drove around all over the state a lot. And we shared one thing, is that we got really concerned about these barns because so many of them were disappearing. And I'll have to say, for the majority of my life, I did not really appreciate barns, these historic barns. I even make the comment sometimes that maybe the reason I spend so much time on this and I am so committed to this and care so much is because I feel like I'm doing penance for barns that I took down on our farm, for instance. But really the key is, and I tell people this a lot when I do barn assessments, is I just really want people to make a conscious decision. I know we're not going to keep all of them up, but I want people to think about it and make a conscious decision rather than just letting the barn deteriorate and eventually fall down. If somebody actually wants to get any of this out of a barn, let's get up in the barn and take it down and not wait for it to fall, cut holes in the roof. It may be a little easier that way, but let's do try to help people make the decision to actually hopefully keep them standing, but at least have a conscious decision about what happens to that barn. But Marsha Williamson Moore is with us today, and Marsha was one of our earlier board members and is Maury's daughter. And most of you know that we have the legacy, the Williamson Legacy Endowment that we hope to, we have to continue to build. And one of the things I'll mention in a little bit in my actual report is that we made some really good progress with that this year, but it's really just a small piece of where we need to go with it. So to move on with the annual meeting, and as I said, this is one of those necessary processes, and we'll move through the reports and so forth as quickly as we can. But to begin with, and Christine has prepared this nice booklet that you can follow along in. If you will turn to the minutes, Tommy Kleckner is our secretary, and I'm sure Tommy would be happy to read the minutes to you. But if somebody would want to make a motion, we will dispense with the reading of the minutes. You have the minutes from last year's annual meeting on page 9, 10, 11. Yeah, just 9, 10, and 11, Tommy. It's only 3 pages. Wouldn't take you long, but would anybody want to make a motion? Randy makes the motion, and we'll go with 2 Randys in this case. We'll go with Randy Haymaker for the second on that. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, Tommy. So you don't have to read them. But anyway, your minutes are there from the annual meeting last year. Then financial report. Deb Connor is our treasurer. And many of you know we were at Deb's barn. Deb has a wedding venue barn, and of course we hope, and Deb is busy today with the wedding. And so Deb couldn't be here. The finance committee just reviewed where we're at this week, one evening, and Christine is going to give that report. So Christine.
Well,
It's on a slide. It is on a slide.
it is on a slide, and there's a little animation. It was really great. We need to get this working before Duncan slides, but I will go ahead and just do the financial report. You all, page 8. I would like to say in the past year, the past 2 years, as the foundation or the Barn Foundation has grown, we've made improvements to the financial policies. We are now doing we're not doing the 990 postcard anymore, which is what nonprofits have to do if they're under a certain amount. We're now doing the easy nonprofit, or easy 990, which is a little more involved. So we've been improving our financial policies as we go. So income, just really quickly for this is from July 1st of last year to June 30th of this year. The income was $167,000. I wanted to point out that we $330,000 of that is from the local leadership grant, which is from Indiana Landmarks, which enabled the foundation to hire an executive director. We also received $36,500 in other grants. For donations, we have it divided up into our regular operational donations, which was $30,000 last year, and then the Williamson Foundation, which I know Kent is going to talk about a little more, but it's $25,000. We have it divided up because obviously we need 2 kinds of donations. We need the donations that help us with the annual operating costs, but then we're also we are becoming, as we become bigger and we want to be sustainable, we have the Maury Williamson Endowment that helps us become sustainable, and those funds are through the Central Indiana Community Foundation. They are not readily available, so we are allowed to use 5% of our endowment funds a year, or we don't have to. We can also keep that in the account to make more interest. So that's why that's divided up like that. For expenses, it went at about $120,000 in expenses. I just pointing out a couple of things. We did do a new version of the barn booklet, and we printed 10,000 copies of those, and since that was $10,000, that was a pretty big expenditure. And I think that's about it for the newsletter expenses. Probably a little lower than normal. I think maybe this might not been a full year. Maybe we got kind of, yeah, I don't know. So the net income is $47,000. Again, that includes the Williamson Foundation donation. So that is not, all of that is not currently available to us. So our net operating income was $5,000. And just wanted to let you know, if you are interested in learning more about the Williamson Endowment, we have some brochures up at the registration table. The balance statement, our operating funds, collectively, I can't do math right here, so this is on my slide, about $120,000. The Williamson Foundation, or Williamson Endowment Funds, we have $145,000 in that account. Currently, this year, $8,600 of that is available to us. So the total for our bank accounts is $264,245.74. So, okay. Oh, there was my financial report. There we go.
Yeah.
Look at these highlights. The last thing I did want to point out is the Williamson Foundation. At the end of June of last year, it was about $99,000 in that fund, and this year, at the end of June this year, it's $145,000. So we have made some nice improvements to that endowment fund. Okay. You want to introduce Duncan?
Well, is there a motion to approve
Oh, yeah.
the financial report? Janet, and then Rick is second. Janet Ayers and Rick Ryan seconds. Any questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay, we approved that. Well, while we're on that, it will be part of my report, but I'll just sort of skip over that. We have, many of you know, if you've been around this organization a while, we operated a lot of years with very little money. And it looks like we have a lot of money, and we do right now. But for instance, we've been talking about, we've been working on a strategic plan just recently. And we've identified that as big things, and big things in looking 5 years ahead for 2021, for instance. I really, really want us to find a way. We need to find a way to get the endowment. We've done terrific this year. We passed $100,000, which has been a goal of mine. We've increased it by about 50%. Really, if you go back very far last year, it's been more than that. You know, some of you know, we had a program last year with matching funds for that. But I really feel like we need to get that by 2031 to at least $2 million. And that would bring in enough money then that we can really sustain this organization and be able to do things. So as you talk to people, you know, as you think about what you might be able to donate and, you know, how we might be able to work with people to increase that amount, I believe that part of sustaining and believing in the mission of this organization is that's a critical piece, is to get that endowment to at least that level. So it's important. We're in good shape right now, but we've been fortunate enough to have the Landmarks grant that has helped us in being able to hire Christine and keep her. But for the long run, we've got to raise a lot more money ourselves. So that's some of what we're looking at in a lot of our important work right now. I hate for it to be about money, but like most things in life, ultimately it is one way or another. So we want to continue doing the good things we're doing, but certainly have to have funds to do that. Okay, the next thing we'll actually move into is election of board members. And that is also board elections. You've got a page on that. And we have actually four, if you look on page 13, we have 5 board members whose terms expire this year. And 4 of them are willing to seek another term. Cindy Barber is very interested in the organization, but among other things, like a couple of other people on our board, Cindy has 2 twin boys who I think are about 14 now. Anyway, they're into all kinds of stuff. And so Cindy has decided that, she should leave the board for a little while here and hopefully will come back in a few years. So Susan Kenningham. Susan, where are you? I know you're here. Stand up. Oh, okay, Susan's over here. Tommy Kleckner, and Tommy's right here that you've seen. Christy. Is Christy still here? I was looking for her. I thought she said she had something else going on today when I talked to her. And Randy's, yeah, Christy, Christy was over here earlier. And Randy Sexton, oh, Randy, I hadn't seen you yet. Okay, great. All right, Randy's back there. Anyway, so they're all seeking re-election to the board. And then I'll go ahead. Sometimes we've handled these separate, but since it's not a large group this year, you'll see the 2 more names listed at the bottom and a little bit of information about them. And for those of you who have been very involved with either the Barn Foundation or especially Indiana Landmarks, these are familiar names. Marsh Davis, who now some of you may know that Marsh was the executive at Indiana Landmarks for years. He retired, Suzanne, a year and 5 months ago, roughly. Has moved to New Harmony in Posey County. And Marsh was a board member of ours in the early days, from about those very first meetings to, I think, Duncan, 2016. It's when Tommy joined us, whenever that was. Anyway, so, okay. Well, anyway, I'm very excited to have Marsh join the board. And then Suzanne, Marsh could not be here today, by the way. I talked to him earlier in the week, and he did not have this scheduled soon enough, that he had some other things today. But Suzanne Stannis, who also, Suzanne, if you would wave, stand up, something. Suzanne has been, I would say, aside from Tommy actually being on the board, and Tommy works for Landmarks, but as far as our contact with Indiana Landmarks, we are officially an affiliate of Indiana Landmarks. I should say that too. Suzanne has been integral to everything that we've done. And Suzanne also retired. When was that? Just in May. I thought that was, but obviously my timeline gets off on people on, when they've done things. So Suzanne recently retired, and she is willing to join the board. So we're very excited to be able to add both those people. So I would ask if there's a motion to approve all of those as board members. Okay, Mark made the motion. Max seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. Okay, thank you. Now, we also have in the bylaws, I need to ask if there are any nominations from the floor. And if there are, that's fine. We put in a probationary period for people, for new board members of 6 months. There's a whole process also outlined in our bylaws of talking to board members ahead of time, but then it also says, if there are nominations from the floor, that's okay. So I'll ask if there are any nominations for the board from the floor. Okay, I know I'm really probably supposed to ask that 3 times, but I'm not. We're going to get through some of this. So if you're interested in serving on the board, please talk to one of us. We're always looking for board members. This ends up being a hard thing to get done. And hopefully, well, we now offer some other opportunities as barn assessors, as county reps. Some of you are one or the other or both of those, but certainly want to encourage you to be involved in some other way with us. So I really appreciate, we need to have people involved, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that in my report. So, okay, so that concludes the election portion. Next is my report of activities, which is, again, one of those required things in statute that we do. And I am not going to read my report. It is in there. I did notice last night, I don't know why I didn't notice this to begin with, but I'm sure you'll all want to read this word for word. And if you do, you'll notice a word that I inadvertently, in switching things around, I guess is how this usually happens, I left a comma and a word in here that should not be there. It doesn't really change anything, but for those of you who don't really want to read it, if you look at the end of the third paragraph, that's where it's at. I didn't pick up on that until, as I said, last night, and then we're at my daughter's house and away from the computer, and Christine's already got it in the report anyway. So a few high points that I'll try to hit here. I do want to thank each of you here for caring about barns and for helping us promote our mission, which is, our mission is very clear and very simple. It is supporting the preservation of historic Indiana barns. And I'm pretty confident everybody in this room is interested in that mission and wants to see it succeed. And you are each critical to doing this. This organization takes everybody being involved to really make much progress. So as I skip down through here, we were thrilled to be able to meet at Beck's last year, and of course to be able to be here in this barn this year. And it is a terrific venue, obviously, which more than today helps us promote our mission with other people who just get a chance to be in here, see the barn, see a little bit about barns in Indiana in general, and a little bit about the Indiana Barn Foundation. So I think that's very important to us in the long run. It's letting people know that we're here and we care about barns and helping us to connect with other people who care about barns. One of the things I often say is, if you wanted to pick, these barns that we're interested in, these historic barns are icons of the Midwest. And if you want to see some depiction of the Midwest, whether it's on a screensaver or an advertisement or whatever it is, you don't see a modern machine shed, you see a historic barn. If people are trying to show you and make you think of the Midwest with some picture. So that's very important. And to continue this mission, as I said, it is critical that we be able to have the funds to sustain this organization. And in the longer run, we've done well lately, but we've really got some work to do to make that a reality into the future, and to keep this organization vibrant, and to keep, more importantly, to keep our mission vibrant and working. I really do want to thank the board. Being on the Indiana Barn Foundation board is not an easy task. We have a lot of meetings. Everybody knows that virtually everybody's life is very busy. The board has to be involved. We've talked about when we were able to hire Christine. The only way, we can't expect Christine to do everything herself. We've got to, as a board, and you as members, as much as you can help, to be able to do things to keep the organization moving forward, to make sure more people know about us, know about our mission, and know how they can help to make our mission reality. But over the last year, a few of the highlights of things that we've done, aside from those kind of normal things that we've done for a while: annual meeting, barn tour, Hoosier Heritage Barn Week, which we do have scheduled for the week coming up on the barn tour, which is going to be in Montgomery County on October 10th. So you'll see more about that again, and can get some more information about it. But we've, of course, barn grants, that you'll hear a little more about in a minute, as well as barn assessments. Educational activities is one thing that I believe is critical. We just had a barn assessment workshop about 3 weeks ago, Mark, I think, right? That we had great attendance at, and I think the things that help us, whether it's the workshop, whether it's barn assessment, whatever it is that lets us reach people and get out and talk to people, it really does help. That's what promotes our mission best, I think. So all of you can certainly play a part in that again. But over the last year, we did, as has been mentioned already, revise the barn booklet. Of course, it has a different picture on the front. A lot of the inside's the same, but there were some changes in there, and especially some barn assessment language and pictures that were added to it. And then also another huge to me thing was, besides that workshop and the opportunity to collaborate here, was the Williamson Endowment and the advancement that we made in it. But again, that's a one very good step. We've got a lot more steps to make to get to where we need to be there. And then near the end, I would just say that any progress we make continues to be dependent on volunteers. Your time, talent, and treasure are critical to that progress. You can help, and you can be a critical element by telling other people about the Barn Foundation, promoting the Barn Foundation, promoting the preservation of these barns in any way that you can. And you are each essential to the success of this organization. So that concludes my annual report. And let's see, next up, then we have Duncan. Where are you, Duncan? Oh, right there. Okay, you're close. All right, Duncan's gonna give us an update on the grants, and hopefully this is going to work. Christine, is that if I press?
Just the error. Yep, there you go.
Okay. All right. So Duncan Campbell has done a lot of different things in this organization. Barn assessments to begin with, especially, and organizing that. And then you'll hear immediately after Duncan, we'll go to Randy Miles to talk about barn assessments and a little bit about where we're at with that. Then Rick Ryan to talk about that county rep program that I mentioned. And then Christine is going to wrap up with membership, upcoming events, and perhaps a few other things. So Duncan, turn it over to you.
So in the booklet that's on your tables, we've actually announced the recipients for this year's grants, and there were 5 of them. That's the first year that we've done that many, which is a good thing. So I'll just very quickly, these are the folks who were recipients: Jerry and Christopher Forrest in Waterloo, Shad Peters in Muncie, David and Heather Null, Linda Estes Spartan, DJ and Amanda Huff. And you'll notice that these are all 19th century barns, which is a little unusual, actually, that they're all basically of the same vintage. And the descriptions here show you what their estimated amount of cost was in their application, and what the primary use of our funds would be. Our grant is $2,500 with the expectation that the recipient match it with another $2,500. So the minimum amount of money that's going to get spent on these barns is $5,000. The reality is that almost all recipients spend way more than the match requirement. We've had, you can see here, well, the very first one, the estimate is $15,000 to $20,000 for that cost. We tried to look at the neediest barns in the applications, and if you rather than me going through what all the criteria and all that are, if you'll go to our website, there's a very full explanation of how to apply for the grant. You can do it online, you can do it by mail, what the criteria for evaluation are, and you can always, of course, call me and ask more questions if you need to. But the information's, it's all there on the website, so I'm not going to bother to repeat it. I do want to draw attention to a couple of things. If you look down at Linda Estes Barton in Wilkinson, 19th century timber frame barn, transverse barn, $26,000 estimate for structural repair and connective reinforcement. So that's not an obvious application. So one of the things that we've been looking at in terms of saving barns and saving them in perpetuity is, what are we going to do with the effects of increased storms, climate changes, more tornadoes, certainly in Indiana? And are there ways to address these issues in relatively fragile historic barns? And this particular applicant had gone to Rick Collins at Firmitas and had had a full analysis of basically barn risk. And so that grant itself, which we're just a very small portion of, is to address the connective issues in mortise and tenon joints, bracing, missing pieces, ways to anchor the roof that may have not have been original ways to anchor foundations. And this is if you have a historic barn, this is something that you need to be looking at, because any shear wind can take a barn down. And we've, as you probably know, have lost some, and we've helped people rehabilitate some that got blown down. So that I'm particularly interested in that application. This is the first time we've had an applicant who was specifically asking for that kind of application. So I'll just very quickly show you a couple of pictures. This is Jerry and Chris Forrest's barn. And it's a bank barn with a beautiful stone foundation, all hand laid, which basically just collapsed. And it happened to be the wall that was retaining the earthen ramp, of course, which is where they usually collapse. And so this is a grant for them to rebuild that. Shad Peters, there's a lovely historic picture of this English barn, and then a picture of what it looks like today, or hopefully he's already done some of the work. This barn lost its siding. A member of his family, I think it was his grandfather, it might have been his father, removed the old wood siding and put up OSB, oriented strand board, which for those of us in the carpentry business have always been very disappointed about the invention of oriented strand board. It's the absolutely worst thing you could put on a barn. If all you have to do is look at it and it gets wet and expands and starts to deteriorate. So the photograph on the right shows oriented strand board siding in its element, if you will. And so this was a grant to take it all off and replace it again with new siding. And the barn itself is in fine shape, remarkably. I won't elaborate on that too much. David and Heather Knoll, and this is also a connective issue. One wall of this barn slid off its foundation and started to pull away, started to pull rafters out, and started to break the connections at the mortise and tenon joints. And you can see pictures here. The rather subtle lower picture on the left shows a swell in the rafter line, the rafter tail line on that particular wall, the wall that you see above it. That's a telltale. If you see that on your barn, your wall is starting to pull away from the framework. That's a good way to tell just by, you don't even have to get close to it to be able to tell that. So this is a grant to repair those connections. And this is the Barton farm that we talked about. And I put these pictures in here just to give you an idea of when Firmitas does a report on a barn, it's extremely thorough, and they give you pictures back of the work that they've done, showing where the new connections need to be made in order to reinforce the structure of the barn. So I just included some of Rick's pictures to give you an idea of how they find and locate for the owners the places that need to be repaired. and DJ and Amanda Huff. This is another foundation repair, an erosion that has happened because of water problems in there. And this is, again, a historic foundation that they're working to repair. So this is my thanks to the committee. We get sometimes 40 applications. This year we had about 25, I believe. It takes a long time to go through all the applications, to evaluate them compared to all the other applications, and then for all of us to kind of join up and talk about who the recipients need to be. I will say that of 20 applications, typically 19 are good ones. So it's a very difficult process to try to winnow out, it isn't that one's really better than the other. It's just a difficult thing to figure out. And if we had the money, we'd give everyone something. So this is our committee. And this, let me just leave this up here for a second. This is on the website, January 31st, 27 applicants are due for the next year. Okay, thank you.
Come on down, Randy.
Okay, I'll try to summarize and keep it short because we're right before lunch. I enjoy that. First of all, one of the most important things I think we do are the barn assessments, and I'd like to thank those that have participated in that, and I hope I can call out everybody, but Kent in the southern part of the state, we got Rhett, southern part of the state. Is Brent Holloway here? And Mac has, and of course, Mark Kurth. One of the outgrowths of barn assessments this year was the fact that we played a role, even though we weren't as successful as we thought with the barn at Potato Creek, but Mark did a yeoman's job on that, and I want to thank you personally for that because it got a lot of visibility for barns, and that was very, very critical then. Let me just say this, there has been an increase in the want for assessments, and I want to say part of that is that we've gotten a better or more thorough education system. Here we've had Christine out giving presentations, and I know she gave one here at the Hahn Museum in Lafayette, and I had a lot of calls from that. And so thank you. We've even had presentations to the Speedway Lions Club there. And for someone that loves auto racing, that was a joy to give that presentation. But we've had a lot of increased visibility there with soil and water conservation districts, et cetera, from there. So there's a lot of needs. And I want to second what Duncan has said. Many of the last year and a half or 2 years been due to the increased winds, tornadoes and such, and so there's been a lot of work. You know, a couple years ago we were at the circus barn. They've been hit again, and so there's quite a bit of need from there. For those of you that might be interested, we need more barn assessors in certain parts of the state. I try to cover quite a bit of the state, and sometimes that's hard to do or to coordinate, but for those of you that are interested, please see me. We had a workshop again that was essentially created with Mark's great help in the northern part of the state. I've got a couple individuals that are probably going to be going out with me, and we want to get you up and going on that. And so we're going to try to have another one, hopefully more in the southern part of the state where we can be on site, do some things, and go from there. So with that in mind, I would just say that there's a lot of things that we can be doing. And the other one that adds to that, and I know when you start talking about property taxes, we need to get down, but there is an increased interest in the property tax exemption. And I think there's going to be some work coming through Farm Bureau and in concert with us that we may be able to expand what a heritage barn is there, that hopefully will be on more than just mortise and tenon, but something on age and other descriptive aspects from there. Thank you for your support of the barn assessments, the cadre of individuals that are working on it, and look forward to further work in this area. Thank you.
Rick Ryan.
Well, I'm the vice president. Have been very happy in the very limited time that I've been on the board to be exposed to the historical nature of barns. Growing up on a farm, it was pretty easy to identify with the smell of hay when we're putting it up, even though it was oppressively hot at times upstairs if you were having to work up in the barn. But all of those experiences are great, and I've had an opportunity to share that with a lot of folks that I've come across. It's absolutely amazing how many people, since I'm from this area, I live now in Speedway, but so many people that have come here to this place to eat just for lunch, and then I'll hear a comment from them about, well, that was a great place to eat, but I didn't realize the Indiana Barn Foundation had anything to do with that restaurant. So just the little things that we have around are important. So I have been asked to get involved with the county rep program. I did something like that many moons ago when I worked for the Indiana State Medical Association. But the key to I think getting some information and establishing a county rep program is we're not such dreamers that we think we're going to find 92 different people for every county. But what we'd like to do is find folks around the state that are interested enough that they want to get a little bit more involved. And that might be involved with assessments. It might be just connecting us with an old barn in the area. Maybe it's part of a park or something. Or maybe someone's wanting to move a barn to a park. The county rep program should be able to allow us to find out from you if there is something like that you think IBF can be involved with. So if you haven't had a chance to talk to me or Christine or Kent or any of the other board members, and you're interested in becoming part of the county rep program, talk to me today. Contact us via the webpage. We'd be happy to sign you up. And we're not putting a whole lot of restrictions or limitations on what you can do. It's really what you can bring to us. And mainly, it's that contact. Your neighbor that you know that has an old barn, that person down the street, all of those particular connections that you may have in your particular county will be very effective and very helpful for the Indiana Barn Foundation. So again, contact us via the webpage, or if today come up, I'd be glad to share my card with you and let me know that you want to be a county rep. It's a big title and very important, but it is really, really important on the county level because you are the folks that are out there in whatever county across the state that may know that there is an old barn that is in danger of being removed, but you know their family and they'd really like to save it, but they just don't know how to do it. But it's your contact that's going to be able to hook us up, and hopefully we'll be able to make some inroads in saving that barn. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try to be quick because I know we are ready. We're all getting ready to eat lunch. I just wanted to quickly mention memberships. The membership committee has been reviewing. We are at the turn in January, going to raise our membership fees very, very modestly. We actually haven't voted on this yet, but they're going to be really, really modest fee increases for the individual and family members. But we're also working on some tiers, you know, you've seen a lot of nonprofits, sustaining member, that type of thing. We haven't really found any cute names for our tiers yet. But to encourage people to give, you know, if they can, to give a little more and help us be a sustaining organization. And those tiers will be ready in the fall, and then the very modest increase in membership fees will be in January. And why are we doing this? Because our mission is to let us fulfill our mission more through education and public awareness and events and workshops. I see us just different tiers of education. We have the public education, letting everybody know, whether they're a barn owner, whether they live in downtown Indianapolis, or whether they live in rural areas, why they should care about historic barns. It's part of our history. I have like a 1-minute spiel that I tell. I live downtown in Indianapolis. I have the 1-minute spiel ready for people why they should care. And we do that through barn tours, through talks. We can do that through webinars. And then our education for, you know, assistance and training for barn owners, helping barn owners retain their barns, helping them make decisions about how to preserve their barns, connecting them with people who can preserve their barns. And we do that through workshops, and we can do that through webinars, which I'm working on a little series for that. And then even expanding how we can educate other historic preservation enthusiasts about why you should include barn preservation with your overall preservation plan and why that is important. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And so I want to talk about some upcoming events. And this is part of what I was just talking about. We were selected to do a pre-conference workshop for the Association of Preservation Technology, APT. It's an international organization, and we're doing a 2-day workshop in barn preservation. This would be for historic preservation professionals. The first day we're doing a series of presentations, and then the second day Duncan has found a what we think is 1880s barn on the east side of Indianapolis, and so the workshop will take place there. So Duncan will be presenting, Darren Rubino and Chris Boss will be doing a dendrochronology, the tree ring samples. They're doing that over the summer, and then they're going to present their findings for the workshop at the barn. And so I'm very excited about that. It's about getting our name out amongst historic preservation groups. Another event, we actually had this scheduled for this June, and then there were just some scheduling issues, and we had to reschedule it for next June. A hands-on timber frame trades training where Mark Kurth is working with Todd Zeiger of Indiana Landmarks. It's part of Indiana Landmarks and Todd's initiative to provide more historic trades training in the state. And that is going to be in LaPorte County. It's going to be a week long. It is going to be really geared towards people, hands-on timber frame people. So this is appropriate for like maybe a contracting company that wants to send their employees to learn about timber framing. That's going to be at the Heston Steam Museum, and they're going to design and build a 3-bay shed. Right. All right. And then Ted Rita of the Heston Steam Museum is talking about doing some sawmill demonstrations and some other events around this. And then they're going to have a public raising of the structure on Saturday so that people can come out and watch it. And you're going to see some dates for some other events, some other workshops and some webinars soon. We just had our first barn assessment workshop, and that was, I think, very, very successful. Try to encourage people to become barn assessors or just learn more about barn preservation, and we'll have more of those. My final event that I want to announce is our barn tour this year, and Julie Fenton and Randy Miles have been really instrumental in preparing for this. This year it's going to be in Montgomery County. It is October 10th, and it is six barns on the tour, and tickets are on sale as of today. So I'll get you tickets for that. That is all I have. Is there anything from the floor? Tommy, will you talk about?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
If I speak really loudly, can everyone hear me? Okay. Christine had asked if I would simply briefly share about the efforts in stabilizing and rehabilitating the Rudisell Montgomery Colonial Barn in Shelby County. The Blue River Community Foundation, in an effort to help save the barn, identified it as a priority and established a challenge grant fundraiser. It exceeded expectations, and so there is approximately $100,000 that has been raised to go towards stabilization of this unique landmark barn. Indiana Landmarks is working with the Community Foundation. IBF is a partner in this effort, and the Shelby County CDD. And right now, the effort is working with the owners on establishing the family's contribution, and then a colleague in our Central Regional Office at Indiana Landmarks is securing several roofing estimates. The scope of work is still being finalized, but we hope this fall work on that project will begin.
Thank you, Tommy. Does anybody else have anything from the floor? Okay, so I can't see. Are we? While you talk, I'm gonna go back and check on the food.
Okay, yeah. I think, hey, we're just about done, folks. So we just got to see where looks like the food's not all out there yet. But, okay, so as Christine said, anybody have anything else from the floor just to follow up on that? Because we do have, I think, a couple of minutes here anyway. I just wanted to say, I mean, I am sincere when I say that we deeply appreciate all of you who are here. And if you can help us in any way to extend this out to more people being members, more people contributing, that's what's really going to keep this organization around. We've got a great opportunity right now, and I really feel like, you know, in the 12, 13, exactly where you want to count years that we've existed, we've made a lot of progress. But we all know if we care about those historic barns that we have in this state, we've got to make a lot more progress. So it's absolutely critical that each one of you continue to be involved, get other people involved. County rep program that Rick talked about is a great way to do that. And I would just add one thing. We're not looking for just one county rep per county. So if you think your county already has a county rep or you're concerned about that, if there are 3 or 4 or 5, I think that's a great opportunity for people in that county to work together and actually help build. For us to be really successful, I think we've got to build some county or at least regional organizations so that it's easier for us to have contact. It's more efficient for us, Randy, to be able to make some of those barn assessment visits. Several of us end up doing barn assessments or trying to schedule assessments that are a 2-hour drive or more. And if we can get people who are, you know, driving 45 minutes, barn assessments are fun, folks. If you like looking at these barns, I mean, that is my favorite part of being involved in this organization. And it's not that I know a lot about barn repair. It's just interesting seeing the barn and seeing these different little features. And for instance, whether I think I saw tube pins, trunnels, pegs, whatever you call them over here. One of the things that happened to me was, and actually, Rhett, when we went to a barn in, I think that one was Dearborn, Franklin County. Yeah, we did. Rhett and I sort of set a record one day. I think we looked at 15 barns on 8 different farms. It was a long day, but I was so excited about climbing up into the loft of a barn and seeing 3 pins, and they weren't just inch or inch and a quarter pins; they were inch and a half pins in that barn, and I had never seen that before. Actually, I've never seen one with 3 that are that big. So I get home that night and I'm anxious to send a text message for other barn geeks like Randy and Duncan on having seen this and a picture. And Randy hadn't seen any at that time. Duncan had. Randy found one or several within, what, a week or so after that? Yeah. So I have become a barn geek in a lot of ways, and some of you are probably right there and either a geek or ready to be a geek in one way or another. But I think that's what we need. That's what this state needs to be able to keep these barns around. So anyway, thanks so much for your interest. Thanks for being a member. Thanks for being here. Please help us support our mission, support the Indiana Barn Foundation, and move this thing forward. So with that, I'd ask for a motion to close the annual meeting. Julie, motion. Randy, seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Had a feeling nobody would be opposed there. So, all right, thanks so much.